Chapter 208. Why don't you try taking another step forward? Tianyang's cold voice resounded through the entire area. The sharp blade of the sword was aimed at the man. Although it did not explode, the cold light was still flashing. After being pointed at by Tianyang, the man who was about to attack stopped in his tracks. Looking at the sharp tip of the sword, he felt his scalp tingle. He had a feeling that if he took another step forward, Tianyang would not hesitate to kill him. This was not a deduction, but a gut feeling. You? The man opened his mouth and was about to say something when Tianyang's cold voice sounded again. If you dare to utter another word of bullshit, my sword will move. Hearing this, the man shut his mouth and looked at Tianyang fearfully. Although he was at the 8th level of the Bright Chi realm, he still had a feeling that Tianyang was not a match for him. This Clear Chi realm cultivator at the peak of Clear Chi realm was even more threatening than the Clear Chi realm cultivator at the peak of Clear Chi realm, Ling Yuhan, who had just killed his men. Hu Ming, are you trash? You are actually scared by a 6th level Bright Chi realm cultivator. At this moment, Feng Yin saw Hu Ming stop and almost went berserk. The previous man was easily killed by Ling Yuhan. It was normal for him to be killed because his skills were not as good as hers. But this Hu Ming was at the 8th level of the Bright Chi realm. In terms of cultivation, he could easily crush these two trash from a small country. But this Hu Ming actually stopped. He was scared by a peak 6th level Bright Chi realm cultivator. Young Master Feng. At this moment, Hu Ming also turned his head and glanced at Feng Yin. Now that the spiritual fire has not appeared, it is not worth it to lose soldiers and generals for these two fellows. These two are not weak, but they're still far from being able to obtain the spiritual fire. But if we insist on killing them, we will not be able to get away with it. If we lose our combat strength because of these two people, then we will be weaker in the competition with Sky Moon Country and Vesa Country. Hu Ming said. Feng Yan's face darkened when he heard that. Then, he listened to Hu Ming's advice. Although he was arrogant and despotic, it did not mean that he was a fool. The truth was just as Hu Ming had said. At this time, I'll let you live. The next time I see you, I will kill you without mercy. With a cold snort, Feng Yin disdainfully glanced at Tianyang's group, then left in a huff. As far as he was concerned, even though Tianyang's group had some strength, they were still mere ants. Seeing this, Hu Ming also heaved a sigh of relief. Fortunately, Feng Yin listened. Otherwise, if they really fought with Tianyang, they would definitely suffer a big loss. He hurriedly followed. This battle also ended with the snowy wasteland retreating. However, the other spectators in the distance all looked at Tianyang's group in shock. These two people were actually able to defeat the snowy wasteland. Geniuses are not only found in the 3 big countries. As time passed, the other people who wanted to fight for the spiritual fire all arrived. The 3 big countries were all present. However, because one of Snowy Wasteland's men had been killed by Ling Yuhan, in terms of momentum, they were slightly weaker than Sky Moon Country and Vesa Country. When he thought of this, Feng Yin was even more furious. However, he did not dare to kill Tianyang when the others were not present. Now that everyone was here, he was even more cautious. What if Vesa Country or Sky Moon Country suddenly launched a surprise attack while his side was fighting with Tianyang? Two trash from a small country trying in vain to fight for the spiritual fire. Soon, it will be the time of their deaths. Feng Yin snorted coldly and turned his head away, no longer looking at Tianyang and Feng Yin. Tianyang and Feng Yin could not be bothered with this. Instead, they found an empty space beside the spiritual fire and began to rest. Tianyang did not care about Feng Yin. He had already killed the second young master of the Feng family, Feng Qing. It was only a matter of time before he faced Feng Yin. Furthermore, they were going to fight for the spiritual fire. If nothing unexpected happened, these people would all be his enemies. When the people from Sky Moon Country and Vesa Country heard that the snowy wasteland had been defeated, they were shocked and looked at Tianyang and Feng Yin. Tianyang could not be bothered with this. Instead, he stared unblinkingly at the place where the spiritual fire had been born. The spiritual fire was not something that could be casually produced. It had to be produced at noon, the time when the power of the sun was the strongest between heaven and earth. The place where the spiritual fire had been born was also not a random place. It was an altar that had been set up by someone many years ago. When the strongest sunlight shone on the altar, the spiritual fire would appear. However, although the person who had set up the altar had left a message, he had been killed by some accident before the spiritual fire had been born. This had benefited Tianyang and the rest. Soon, Tianyang said as he felt the power of the sun in the air getting stronger and stronger. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan nodded. Her gaze swept across the crowd as the dark ice sword in her hand trembled slightly. She was not afraid but excited. After awakening part of the nine-tailed lunar fox bloodline, Ling Yuhan's martial soul had also evolved into the nine-tailed lunar fox. However, because it needed to evolve, Ling Yuhan was now only at the two-tailed realm. However, the two-tailed realm could also greatly increase Ling Yuhan's combat power. After all, the nine-tailed lunar fox at the two-tailed realm was an upper-class dark-class martial soul. After Ling Yuhan activated the power of her bloodline, her martial spirit was even close to being half a step into the earth rank. This showed how powerful the nine-tailed lunar fox was. The power of the martial soul had increased tremendously, and the power of the bloodline was strong. Moreover, Qian Han, who was a level 3 Dao Fire Realm elite, had taught her attentively. It would be unreasonable if Ling Yuhan's combat power did not soar. However, Ling Yuhan would definitely not be able to defeat Tianyang, and she would be too weak to deal with the rest. Now, with so many people around, Ling Yuhan finally experienced the excitement that Tianyang felt. In Blizzard State, Tianyang was at the top. In a northern wilderness secret territory, he finally had an opponent. That kind of excitement, the present Ling Yuhan had also experienced it. Soon, at this moment, the people from Sky Moon Country also said these two words as the genuine vitality in their bodies surged. The people from the other countries all looked tense as they stared at the altar that was getting brighter and brighter. When the fiery red light was extremely strong, it was the time for the spiritual fire to be born. 3 minutes later, the strong noon sun finally shone on the altar. The fiery red light soared into the sky, bringing with it waves of terrifying fire attribute spiritual qi. Even the Fusang giant tree deep in the giant Sun Mountain range began to tremble. In the next moment, a cluster of flames appeared in the center of the altar. Seeing this cluster of flames, the people's hearts began to beat violently. The spiritual fire was born. Chapter 209. Kill. No one knew who was the first to shout this, but after this word was uttered, the entire crowd went wild. Countless geniuses' eyes flashed with passion. This was the spiritual fire. According to legends, it was a mystical item that could burn mountains and boil seas. The spiritual fire was not big. Because it was confined here by the altar, it could only absorb the power of the sun and the yang attribute spiritual energy in the giant Sun Mountain range to grow. Even after countless years, it was not very strong. Its entire body was pitch black. It was burning fiercely under the sun. The tyrannical fluctuations it emitted also made everyone extremely shocked. As for Tianyang, he raised an eyebrow. Interesting. To the Tianji Sword Emperor, the spiritual fire was interesting, but it was not strong. However, this was only true for the heavenly sons. To others, this spiritual fire was terrifying to the extreme. This spiritual fire is mine. At this moment, a peak clear chi realm cultivator broke through the crowd and arrived at the center of the altar. Looking at the black spiritual fire, he could not help but laugh maniacally. Then, his palm enveloped the spiritual fire. Idiot! Seeing this, Feng Yin was not worried at all. Instead, he sneered contemptuously. Spiritual fire is a mystical item. How can it be taken away so easily? In the next moment, the black spiritual fire suddenly exploded with a terrifying flame. It spread from the young man's palm to his body, and then began to burn wildly. Ah! The young man screamed, but it did not last long. Under the terrifying burning of the spiritual fire, Even a peak clear chi realm cultivator, who was considered the backbone of the country, could not last for more than 3 seconds. In the next moment, the young man's body trembled. With a muffled bang, the young man immediately turned into ashes. Seeing this, those who did not understand the spiritual fire could not help but shudder and take a few steps back. That was a peak clear chi realm cultivator. Such a cultivator, who was not even 30 years old, would be an incredible genius in the entire northern wilderness region. However, such a genius had been reduced to ashes in just 3 seconds. Not even his bones were left. Feng family, don't think that only your snow wilderness knows the secret of this spiritual fire. At this moment, the man from Sky Moon Country couldn't help but sneer. He shook his space bag, and a small jade bottle appeared in his hand. This spiritual fire can only be contained in this ice spirit jade bottle. The man from Sky Moon Country couldn't help laughing wildly. He injected his genuine vitality into the small jade bottle, and a strong suction force immediately burst out from the mouth of the small jade bottle. Seeing this, Feng Yan's face changed drastically. You actually have the ice spirit jade bottle. Moreover, it's a mid-grade artifact ranked ice spirit jade bottle. Feng Yan was shocked beyond words. To the people of the northern wilderness region, the ice spirit jade bottle was the only treasure that could contain spiritual fire. It contained the powerful ice spirit aura that could temporarily restrain spiritual fire. Furthermore, it could directly absorb spiritual fire of a lower grade. However, such an item was extremely rare. Even Feng Yan had to expend a great deal of effort to obtain a lower-tier treasure weapon ice spirit jade bottle. However, in the hands of the young man from Sky Moon Country, he saw the ice spirit jade bottle, a middle-grade precious weapon. I got it by luck in the northern wilderness mystery land. Hearing this, the young man from Sky Moon Country couldn't help but laugh. His words were full of sarcasm. Hearing this, Feng Yan's face suddenly turned ugly. He knew that the young man had the ice spirit jade bottle, a middle-grade precious weapon. In that case, the ice spirit jade bottle in his hands would never be able to compete with the young man. At this moment, the pitch-black spiritual fire began to tremble under the suction force released by the ice spirit jade bottle. Seeing this, the young man from Sky Moon Country became even more excited. He knew that he was going to get the spiritual fire. TSK. I didn't expect that there would be a middle-grade ice spirit jade bottle in the northern wilderness region. No wonder you're so fearless. At this moment, a young voice was heard, and a figure suddenly appeared on the altar. Hearing this, Feng Yan was stunned. The young man from Sky Moon Country, who was collecting the spiritual fire, suddenly changed his expression. What do you want to do? Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows and smiled. Of course, I want to collect this spiritual fire. In the next moment, Tianyang reached out and grasped the spiritual fire in his hand. You idiot. How can you collect a treasure like the spiritual fire with your hand? Seeing Tianyang use his hand, Feng Yan could not help but laugh wildly. He seemed to have seen Tianyang being burned to ashes by the spiritual fire. However, what happened next made him feel like a duck being choked by its throat. He widened his eyes and was completely speechless. In Tianyang's hand, the spiritual fire, which had exploded with great power, was like a docile kitten. Not to mention burning Tianyang to death, it did not even exert any power. Was this still the spiritual fire they knew? How is this possible? At this moment, the young man from Sky Moon Country found it the most difficult to accept. He had thought that with the middle-grade ice spirit jade bottle, it would be a piece of cake to collect this spiritual fire. However, a heavenly sun had appeared out of nowhere and turned all his efforts into nothing. Bastard! How dare you steal my stuff? Go to hell. At this moment, the young man from Sky Moon Country roared and released the vital essence of LV9 Bright Chi Realm. Half-step to Earth rank, sky-breaking fist. A terrifying aura condensed on the young man's fist. Seeing this, Tianyang narrowed his eyes slightly. It was also a half-step to Earth rank martial arts technique, but the sky-breaking fist displayed by the young man from Sky Moon Country was much stronger than the Fire Dragon fist. Moreover, this person was a LV9 Bright Chi Realm cultivator. Haha, God is helping me. This trash from a small country dares to steal the spiritual fire. He's courting death. Everyone, let's kill this person first and then distribute the spiritual fire. Those who help us kill this person will be rewarded. At this moment, Feng Yin roared and the vital essence of LV9 Bright Chi Realm completely exploded. Half-step to Earth rank, Sun God Fist. Feng Yin and a young man from Sky Moon Country, one in front and one behind, charged towards Tianyang. At this moment, the crowd, who had not been interested in the spiritual fire, could not help but become excited and ecstatic after hearing Feng Yin's words. Who was Feng Yin? He was the young master of the Feng family from Snow Wilderness. The reward he would give would definitely not be weak. At this moment, Tianyang, who was surrounded by the crowd, became the target of public criticism because of Feng Yan's words. Gale Fist, Cloud Sword, Fire Wolf Fist. Countless cultivators charged towards Tianyang. You want to trick me with such little tricks? Seeing the countless attacks around him, Tianyang laughed loudly. Sky Sword Technique. Chapter 210. Celestial Sword Art. Second Sword. Tianyang roared. The inner yuan in his body surged out like a flood. The killing sword in his hand shone with a terrifying light. A vast and surging aura erupted from Tianyang's body. Sensing this aura, even the two clear Chi Realm cultivators could not help but tremble. Was he really only at the peak of the clear Chi Realm? Why did the two of them, who were at the 9th level of the radiant Chi Realm, feel an unparalleled threat from Tianyang? Shatter the heavens. Following this shout, the killing sword exploded with a layer of light that illuminated everything. At the same time, a powerful aura that seemed like it was going to destroy the world was also emitted. The black spiritual fire in Tianyang's hand seemed to have sensed the destructive aura and even began to tremble. Even though Tianyang had only caught it and had yet to refine it, let alone make it recognize him as its master, the pitch-black spiritual fire's intelligence was telling him that it was impossible. The Heavenly Sun was the best master for it. There was no other. A pitch-black destructive sword radiance shot out from the killing sword. The surrounding spiritual energy seemed to have been sucked dry by this sword. Even the powerful attacks unleashed by countless cultivators were instantly shattered like tofu when they encountered this sword light. The celestial sword art was not an ordinary sword art. It was the combination of the strongest sword techniques that Tianyang had created. The first sword, Heavenly Ascension, was an upper-grade Earth-class sword technique that Tianyang had created when he was in the Tao Fire Realm. Because it was the first to be created, it became the first sword technique of the celestial sword art. As such, the Shatter the Heavens that Tianyang had used was a peerless Earth-class sword technique that he had created when he was at the peak of the Tao Fire Realm. One sword, shattering heaven and earth. Boom! Surging waves of chi spread out in all directions. Feng Yin and the other clear Chi Realm level 9 cultivators' ultimate killing move was instantly broken. More than half of the other cultivators who were tempted by the opportunity were killed by the sword. Blood splattered in the air. Countless people died or were seriously injured by this pitch-black sword radiance. Even the two clear Chi Realm cultivators were seriously injured after using their ultimate killing moves. How is this possible? How could a peak clear Chi Realm cultivator from a small country use such a terrifying attack? Feng Yin roared in disbelief after being sent flying by Tianyang's sword. He could not believe it, and did not want to believe that he, the young master of the Feng family from Snow Wilderness, was one of the top cultivators in the Northern Wilderness Secret Territory. But in front of this trash of a clear Chi Realm cultivator from a small country, he could not even withstand a single blow. The young man from Sky Moon Country beside him was even more horrified. He roared madly in his heart. As a genius from Sky Moon Country, how could he be inferior to a trash from a small country? Tianyang looked at the two of them indifferently. His heart was calm. Then, he looked coldly at the people who had besieged him. These people were at most at clear Chi Realm level 8. They could not even withstand Tianyang's Aurora swordsmanship, let alone the heaven-shattering sword, which was part of the Heaven-class sword technique. Its power was equivalent to that of an Earth-class sword technique. 60% of the people who had besieged him died under his sword. Devil, he is a devil. At this moment, Tianyang's cold gaze swept over one of the clear Qi realm cultivators. He was scared out of his wits and shouted madly, "We are only here to kill you for the treasure. How can you be so vicious?" At this moment, a beautiful woman beside him roared at Heavenly Sunday. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows and said coldly, "When they wanted to kill me, they had to die." Just to kill me? This girl's logic was really strange. They wanted to kill me, but I killed them. How could she accuse me of being vicious? They were just blinded by greed. They will definitely wake up in the future. Aren't you afraid of being punished by heaven for being so vicious? The girl shouted coldly. At this moment, although she was only at Clear Chi Realm Level 8, she seemed to be standing on the moral high ground and looking down at Tianyang. Hearing this, Tianyang sneered. "So you are a saint. I don't want to waste my time talking to you. I have said that they have to die. You are no exception." In the next moment, the killing sword in Tianyang's hand emitted a shocking, bloody sword radiance. It killed the girl and the people around her. When the girl saw the sword radiance coming for her, her eyes revealed a trace of horror. Just as she opened her mouth to speak, the sword radiance swept past her neck, and she died an unnatural death. Tianyang wouldn't argue with the holy mother bitch. If she became his enemy, he wouldn't care. If she was an enemy, he would just kill her. After killing so many people and drinking so much blood, the killing sword's body shone with a bloody light. It was obvious that it was going to level up again. This treasure sword was obtained from the dragon transformation pool in the hidden dragon ancient land. It could use blood to level up. At most, it could reach the peak of upper grade treasure. Now, that it was shining, it meant that the killing sword was going to level up to upper grade treasure. Then, the remaining two culprits should also contribute to the sky cloud sword and the killing sword. Tianyang's expression was cold as he looked at the two people who had just managed to stabilize themselves. A cold light flashed in his eyes. The real enemies in this fight for the spiritual fire were these two. Most of the people who had surrounded him had been killed. As for the rest who had escaped, Tianyang was too lazy to chase after them. They were just clowns. However, Tianyang had to kill these two people. Martial Spirit, Dragon Blood, Divine Turtle. Feng Yin panicked under Tianyang's gaze. He hurriedly activated his martial soul, and a tortoise with dragon horns appeared behind him. This martial spirit was extremely solid. It was only one step away from being able to possess Feng Yan's body. Although it was only half a step away from possessing Feng Yan's body, it had increased Feng Yan's defense and attack power. The young man from Sky Moon Country beside him did the same. Martial Spirit Berserk Elephant. In the next moment, a huge elephant shadow appeared behind the young man from Sky Moon Country. The young man's eyes immediately turned blood red. The Dragon Blood Divine Turtle contained dragon blood and could greatly increase the offensive and defensive power of the martial spirit user. It was an upper-grade dark class martial spirit. The Berserk Elephant had the talent to go berserk. Once it was summoned, its combat power would increase greatly. It was a half-step away from Earth-class martial spirit. Die. After summoning their martial spirits, Feng Yin and the young man from Sky Moon Country roared at the same time. In a flash, they appeared in front of Tianyang. Dragon Blood Divine Turtle, Dragon Turtle Divine Fist, Berserk Elephant, Barbarian Elephant Galloping. The two of them roared, and a huge aura surged out from their bodies. Seeing this, Tianyang's expression did not change. The corner of his mouth curled up into a smile. He understood. Chapter 2:11. Dragon Turtle Divine Fist. Elephant Galloping. Feng Yin and the young man from Sky Moon Country both activated their strongest martial souls and displayed their strongest martial arts techniques. Dragon Turtle Divine Fist, Earth Class Lower Class Fist Technique. Elephant Galloping, Earth Class Lower Class Fist Technique. These two martial arts techniques were the best in the entire Northern Wilderness region. But now, Feng Yin and the young man from Sky Moon Country were using them against a bright Qi Realm Peak LV6 martial artist. The people watching the battle from afar were horrified. A bright Qi Realm Peak LV6 martial artist was so terrifying. Not bad, 2 Earth-class martial arts techniques. But do you know that you haven't mastered the most important part of these 2 martial arts techniques? Tianyang said with a chuckle as he looked at the 2 martial arts techniques. Hearing this, Feng Yin and the young man from Sky Moon Country's eyes lit up. At this time, Tianyang said with a chuckle, "Your hearts are already filled with fear. How is it possible for you to use the strongest power of these 2 tyrannical Earth rank martial skills? Let me show you what a real overbearing fist technique is." Tianyang laughed loudly. The genuine core strength in his body roared, and his 6 ultimate Qi Cs exploded with Xinguang. Tianyang clenched his fists tightly. A shocking light burst out from Tianyang's body. Dragon King Divine Fist. Tianyang laughed loudly. A surge of dragon Qi burst out from Tianyang's body and turned into a pillar of light with a divine dragon hovering around it. Dragon King Divine Fist was an overbearing fist technique that Tianyang obtained from the East Sea Dragon Palace when he was traveling the continent in his previous life. However, after the exchange, Tianyang found that he had been tricked by the old dragon sage who had reached the peak of the Heaven Ascension realm. This was because this Dragon King's Divine Fist could only be used by people from the Dragon Clan. In Tianyang's previous life, he was a pure human. How could he learn this Dragon King's Divine Fist? Unexpectedly, Tianyang reincarnated and cultivated again. He actually condensed the body of a flood dragon. His dragon aura and strength were not inferior to that of a baby true dragon. Naturally, the Dragon King Divine Fist could also be used. Break! Tianyang roared. Dragon Qi surged, and his W-Iron body was activated to the extreme. The physical strength that could crush countless cultivators of the same level completely erupted. In the next moment, Tianyang's Dragon King Divine Fist, which seemed to contain a true dragon, collided with the Dragon Turtle Divine Fist's elephant galloping. Boom! A terrifyingly loud sound resounded across the entire northern part of the giant Sun Mountain range. In the next instant, 2 figures were directly sent flying. Both Feng Yin and the young man from Sky Moon Country could not imagine that their strongest punch would be so weak in front of Tianyang. The Dragon Turtle Divine Fist was the first to be defeated by the Dragon King Divine Fist. It was just a turtle with some dragon bloodline. In front of the real Dragon King, it could only crawl. The second was the elephant galloping that the young man from Sky Moon Country was so proud of. With this move, the young man from Sky Moon Country had killed countless experts of the half-step to the origin transformation realm. However, Tianyang, who was 3 small realms weaker than them, defeated it in the hands of Tianyang. What they could not accept the most was that not only were they utterly defeated, but the enormous power contained in Tianyang's fist had actually rushed into their bodies. It had broken their meridians, Dantian, and Qi Si one by one. These 2 young geniuses, who could be regarded as geniuses in any country, had been crippled after just 1 round with Tianyang. No wonder it's the Dragon Sage's heaven-class martial skill. This Dragon King Divine Fist is indeed extraordinary. Tianyang sighed as he looked at the 2 men with superior profound-class martial souls who had been severely injured and sent flying. Even their martial soul's power had been greatly dispersed by this punch. Although he had been cheated by the old Dragon Sage of the East Sea in his previous life, he had profited greatly in this life. It's a pity that this Dragon King Divine Fist consumes a lot of Dragon Qi. The Dragon Pearl that I obtained from Xiao Hong's descendant cannot support me for many rounds of the Dragon King Divine Fist. If I want to use it freely, I have to at least condense the true dragon body and produce Dragon Qi or even Dragon Power on my own. Tianyang muttered to himself. This Dragon King Divine Fist was extremely powerful, but unfortunately, it consumed a lot of Tianyang's current strength. However, it could be used together with the Dragon Sword superpower and the Sky Sword skill as Tianyang's trump cards. Then Tianyang curled the corners of his mouth and looked at the two young men who had been crippled on the ground with their meridians broken. He walked over slowly. You. Seeing Tianyang coming closer and closer, Feng Yan's pale face became even paler. He knew that Tianyang would not be merciful to him after what he had done to Tianyang. Feng Yan was filled with regret. Why did he have to become enemies with Tianyang? Because of that bright Qi realm 7th level aristocrat. The young man from Sky Moon Country beside him also hated Feng Yan. If it were not for his instigation, the young man from Sky Moon Country would not have made an enemy of Tianyang. Now, the two of them had become crippled, fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. Tianyang stood in front of the two of them and looked down at them with a bright smile. Congratulations, you can reunite with your brother in the underworld. The killing sword in Tianyang's hand flashed. Before Feng Yan could react, the sword had pierced his throat. Feng Yan, the genius of Snowland Country, was dead. Don't kill me. I am the son of the Duan family from Sky Moon Country. I am the second prince of the imperial family. If you kill me, the imperial family of the Duan family will never let you go. Seeing that Feng Yan had been killed so easily, the young man from Sky Moon Country suddenly panicked. He was afraid that Tianyang, the cold-blooded devil, would really kill him. Oh! Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows and his smile became even brighter. Feng Qing and Lu Qing from Windy Country both said the same thing before. Hearing this, the young man from Sky Moon Country was stunned. Then he came to his senses and looked at Tianyang's bright smile. His face turned pale. Obviously, they had threatened the devil in front of them, just like him. However, they were all dead. I think that everyone is equal. Since I've killed all those people, it's not good to leave you alone. Tianyang smiled. Hearing this, the young man from Sky Moon Country understood what Tianyang was talking about. He hurriedly said, No, I am not threatening you. I am saying that if you spare my life, the imperial family of Sky Moon Country will definitely give you endless wealth. Even the spiritual fire that you want. Everything. Seeing this, Tianyang's smile faded and a trace of amusement flashed across his eyes. Since threatening didn't work, he was begging for mercy? If the hard way didn't work, he would use the soft way. This guy had a good plan. Unfortunately, whatever, I'm not interested. In the next moment, Tianyang stabbed the killing sword into his neck. There was a flash of light. The heavenly sword had advanced to the medium grade of the profound class. Chapter 2:12. This time, the advancement of the sky firmament sword did not cause as much of a commotion as the previous time. This also allowed Tianyang to heave a sigh of relief. If there was such a huge commotion every time, then he would not be able to survive. One had to know that each advancement would cause a bigger commotion than the previous one. If Tianyang advanced to a heaven-rank martial soul, then wouldn't that shock the entire continent? The tallest tree in the forest would be blown away by the wind. If Tianyang attracted the attention of those hidden experts, then his cultivation in this lifetime could be considered finished. However, Tianyang did not know that he had already shocked the entire continent long ago. Moreover, in Tianyang's Soul Sea, under the circumstances that he did not know, endless 9-color Xingguang was being emitted from the sky firmament sword and integrated into Tianyang's Soul Sea. In those who died, those who ran away, that's about enough. Looking around, other than his good disciple who had helped to kill during the siege, there was no one else. Under Tianyang's feet, streaks of blood were glaring, and the surroundings were filled with corpses. TSK, a spiritual fire attracted so many people, and so many died. The charm of this treasure is indeed extraordinary. Tianyang clicked his tongue, and the spectator who was trembling in fear in the distance could not help but be speechless when he heard this. Didn't this treasure still fall into your hands? Didn't you kill all these people? That's right, the one on the side, that's right, it's you, the one hiding in the bushes 3 miles to the west. At this moment, Tianyang suddenly smiled and said, After watching the battle for so long, I want you to do me a small favor. Is that okay? Hearing this, the spectator was completely stunned. What was going on? He was extremely confident in his concealment methods. Ordinary people would not be able to discover him even if they were hiding within 100 meters of him. However, Tianyong was actually able to see him hiding in the bushes from 3 miles away, and he had restrained his aura to the limit. What kind of terrifying anti-detection ability was that? Even he might not be able to do that. Help me tell the group of geniuses from Sky Moon Country and Snow Wilderness Country that this Feng Yin and that guy from the Duan family of Sky Moon Country, whose name I don't know, died at the hands of me, Tianyong. Tianyong smiled faintly. Hearing this, the spectator's body trembled. What was this guy trying to do? If I can make them angry enough to kill me, that would be the best. After that, Tianyong brought Ling Yuhan with him, circulated his true origin, and left the place. Due to the loss of the pitch-black spiritual fire, the altar had lost its function and collapsed on its own. Then, Tianyong's and Tianyong and Lingz's. Soon after, that person also turned around. His heart was trembling. There was actually such a monstrous genius in the Arctic state. Perhaps it would not be long before the situation of the northern wilderness region being ruled by 3 nations would change. There was no need for the spectator to deliver the message. Even before the spectator walked out of the giant Sun Mountain range, the news had already spread all over the place. Somewhere in the forest, the most powerful genius from Sky Moon Country, who was exploring the remains, almost activated the formation. Damn it! An angry roar resounded through the forest. Tianyong from Snowgale Country. How dare you kill my younger brother? I want you dead. Duan Huang was the most powerful person from Sky Moon Country in this exploration of the secret territory. He was also the first prince of Sky Moon Country and the most powerful genius of the younger generation. He had already reached the half-primordial transformation realm. His actual combat strength was much stronger than Feng Yin and the young man from Sky Moon Country. Pass down my order. Everyone from Sky Moon Country is to search for that Tianyong. When I come out, I will tear that Tianyong into pieces. Duan Huang said angrily. Hearing this, the man in black beside him nodded and left the forest in a flash. After the man in black left, Duan Huang's anger did not subside at all. In his eyes, a terrifying rage and murderous intent was brewing Snowgale Country. What? Feng Yin was killed. Hearing this news, the most powerful genius of the younger generation from Snowgale Country was shocked and then furious. A piece of trash from small country dares to kill a genius from Snowgale Country. Search for him. Find that Tianyong, and I will torture him to death. The man roared. Hearing this, the geniuses from Snowgale Country beside him were also furious. Snowgale Country was one of the 3 countries. The top 3 geniuses from one of the 3 strongest countries in the northern wilderness region had died at the hands of someone from a small country like Snowgale Country. This was simply a ruthless slap to their faces. All of you, search for him too. Find that Tianyong. Tell him what Snowgale Country is. The most powerful genius from Snowgale Country shouted coldly. Hearing this, the geniuses from Snowgale Country beside him nodded and scattered to search for Tianyong. At the same time, Tianyong had returned to the Fusang tree. The dense yang spiritual qi in the entire giant Sun Mountain range came from the Fusang tree. This showed how powerful the Fusang tree was. Tianyong had the body of a dragon and a terrifying combat strength that did not match his cultivation level. Even if the yang spiritual qi beside the Fusang tree was terrifyingly dense, he could still endure it. However, he could endure it and treat it as normal. But the others were different. Even Ling Yuhan, who had awakened the bloodline of the nine-tailed moon fox, possessed a high-grade mystic-class martial spirit, and had reached the peak of the 7th level of the bright Qi realm, found it difficult to tolerate the Yang Qi here. Even Ling Yuhan was like this, let alone the others. In the entire northern wilderness secret realm, the Fusang tree was definitely the most suitable place for Tianyong to cultivate. If I hadn't been transported here, I don't know how long it would take for me to cultivate the heavenly dragon body. Tianyong looked at the tall Fusang tree and chuckled. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan, who was beside him, was shocked. The place she had been transported to was very far away from the Fusang tree. The northern wilderness secret realm was indeed strange. Even when they entered together, they could be so far away. Yuhan, I'm going to refine the spiritual fire and break through to the next cultivation level. Your nine-tailed moon fox is clashing with the yang spiritual qi here, so you don't have to stay here. Tianyang laughed. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan replied without thinking, How can I? Master must be in a defenseless state after devouring the spiritual fire. He has also just offended Sky Moon Country and Snowgale Country. If they know that Master is here, they will definitely send people to attack. So I must protect Master. Ling Yuhan spoke sternly and righteously. However, when he said these words, even Ling Yuhan himself blushed a little. What kind of person was Tianyang? Even Xianhan, who was at level 3 of the Dao Fire Realm, had to respect him. How could he be afraid of the attacks from Sky Moon Country and Snowgale Country? Even when he was cultivating, it was the same. However, in order to further develop her relationship with Tianyang, Ling Yuhan was going to give it her all. That makes sense. Tianyang heard this and nodded thoughtfully. He did not notice Ling Yuhan's thoughts. But you'd better not get too close to the Fusang tree. Not to mention you. Even Qianhan can't hold on for too long. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan smiled sweetly. To her, as long as she could protect Tianyang, it would be fine. Chapter 213. He sat cross-legged under the Fusang tree. In Tianyang's right palm, a black flame burned fiercely, and its aura grew stronger and stronger. Tianyang knew that this was because of the Fusang tree. The power of the sun reigned supreme among the fire attribute energy, and the Fusang tree was called the Great Sun's Sacred Tree for a reason. The yang energy absorbed by the Fusang giant tree was naturally absorbed by the pitch-black spiritual fire and grew stronger. How strange! Tianyang fiddled with the spiritual fire that he grasped tightly with his left finger, but he muttered, Didn't they say that spiritual fires are the most unruly? Why? This black spiritual fire seems more obedient than a kitten. Logically speaking, even if an almighty forcefully controlled the spiritual fire would definitely retaliate violently. If the almighty was not strong enough, his life would even be threatened. No matter how strong the expert was, or how weak the spiritual fire was, this was inevitable. In Tianyang's previous life, when he refined the second-grade spiritual fire, Blue Heart Fire, when he was in the Dao Fire Realm, he was almost burned half to death by the Blue Heart Fire. However, this black spiritual fire with an unknown name was abnormal. It was as if Tianyang did not want to refine it, but it wanted to recognize Tianyang as its master. If other cultivators and alchemists were to see this scene, they would definitely go crazy with jealousy. They could not obtain a spiritual fire that they had to risk their lives to refine. In Tianyang's hands, it was so docile. This flame has the aura of destruction. And the most important thing about my heaven-shattering sword was the concept of destruction. As the creator of the heaven-shattering sword, I comprehended the concept of destruction from the beginning. Therefore, this black spiritual fire is so docile after sensing that the concept of destruction on me matches it. Tianyang muttered. He did not believe that the pitch-black spiritual fire was so docile by nature. One must know that there were already people who had been burned to death by the pitch-black spiritual fire before the battle had even begun. That scene was spectacular. Forget it. No matter what the hell is going on, this spiritual fire will belong to me. Tianyang laughed loudly. Then, he formed a hand seal and swallowed the spiritual fire into his body. The sixth ultimate sea of qi erupted with shunguang that filled the sky, enveloping the pitch-black spiritual fire within. At this moment, the pitch-black spiritual fire seemed to have encountered some kind of danger and began to struggle madly. However, it had already entered Tianyang's stomach. How could Tianyang spit it out? Don't worry, you won't disgrace your identity as a spiritual fire if you follow me. Refine. Tianyang chuckled softly. His hand seals flipped, and a series of mysterious ripples were released. Devouring spirit fire was a must-have skill, fire manipulation art. The art of controlling fire was a technique created by an ancient almighty to devour spiritual fire. Even Tianyang, the continent's #1 Sword Emperor, who was at the peak of the Heaven Ascension state in his previous life, could not compare to that person. After all, the Almighty known as the Flame Emperor was not only a Heaven Ascension state emperor, but he had also broken through to the realm of Wuzun, a powerhouse who had broken through the restraints of this world. In the entire Heaven continent, there was almost no one who could compare to the Flame Emperor. Tianyang was still a little lacking. The art of controlling fire was created by the Flame Emperor. Naturally, it was best used to devour spiritual fire. Divine Wilderness Heaven Spirit Art, open. At this moment, sensing that the art of controlling fire could not completely suppress the pitch-black spiritual fire, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. In the spiral meridians, rays of light flickered. In the next moment, a shunguang that could suppress all things in the world was released. When refining the dragon chi and cultivating the first of the 9 tempering dragon bodies, Tianyang had used this remarkable ability. However, he did not have the opportunity to use it later on. Now, when he wanted to devour the pitch-black spiritual fire, when the art of controlling fire could not completely resist, the Divine Wilderness Heaven Spirit Art came into effect. Boom, boom, boom. The pitch-black spiritual fire kept attacking Tianyang's body, shaking Tianyang so much that his face turned pale for a moment. However, Tianyang's eyes focused, and he flipped his wrist. An even more powerful art of controlling fire was displayed. The art of controlling fire created by the Flame Emperor and the Divine Wilderness Heaven Spirit Art created by the Tianji Sword Emperor had completed the first fusion in Tianyang's body. In front of the Flame Emperor and Tianyang, 2 emperors, this pitch-black spiritual fire could not do anything. In the beginning, the pitch-black spiritual fire was still attacking Tianyang's body. The most dangerous time was when Tianyang was almost seriously injured. However, later on, under the dual refinement of Tianyang's powerful art of controlling fire and the Divine Wilderness Heaven Spirit Art, even the stronger spiritual fire could only be continuously weakened. When Tianyang had an idea and displayed the annihilation concept of his sky-shattering sword, the pitch-black spiritual fire seemed to have been summoned and immediately gave up resisting. It was directly refined by the Divine Wilderness Heaven Spirit Art and the art of controlling fire, becoming a part of Tianyang. So this pitch-black spiritual fire is called the Annihilation Spiritual Fire. It is a beginner grade 3 spiritual fire. No wonder it is so compatible with the annihilation concept of the sky-shattering sword. It turns out that the spiritual fire itself is annihilation. After refining the annihilation spiritual fire, Tianyang also obtained information about this spiritual fire. The annihilation spiritual fire, a beginner grade 3 spiritual fire, contained the power to annihilate all things. As it had been sealed for a long time, the current annihilation spiritual fire could only display a small portion of the power of a beginner grade 3 spiritual fire. However, for the current Tianyang, it was enough. If he were to use the strongest power at the start, Tianyang would have to consider whether he could withstand the terrifying consumption. That's right. Although the serene blue heart fire in my previous life was powerful, it was only a peak grade 2 spiritual fire. It was quite a distance away from being a grade 3 spiritual fire. Tis TSK. Zhou Xing has a grade 3 spiritual fire. If it wasn't for my sword principle cultivation that beat him, he might have snatched my position as Sword Emperor with his spiritual fire. Tianyang clicked his tongue, and a faint joy appeared on his face. A grade 3 spiritual fire was a treasure that could only be found by chance in the entire sky continent. Now that he had obtained the grade 3 spiritual fire, the annihilation spiritual fire, which was even more powerful than in his previous life, he was naturally very happy. After this killing sword was upgraded to an upper grade treasure, it has also changed quite a bit. After devouring and refining the annihilation spiritual fire, Tianyang scrutinized the burning annihilation spiritual fire in his palm for a while before putting it away. Then, Tianyang took out the killing sword that had been upgraded after drinking the blood of countless geniuses in this battle. After the killing sword had become an upper grade treasure, it had become even more ferocious. The originally slender sword had a faint, murderous aura flowing out. To the Tianji Sword Emperor, this was naturally nothing. However, to an ordinary enemy, this murderous aura was enough to cause the enemy to be in a trance. If the enemy was in a trance, wouldn't it be easy to kill him? Chapter 214. Additional skill, Blood Drinker's Sword. Tianyang raised his eyebrows when he realized that there were additional words in the killing sword's message. Additional skill? Those who could add skills to their weapons were all master craftsmen. Could this killing sword have been made by a master craftsman? After that, Tianyang took a closer look at the patterns on the killing sword. After looking at it for a while, he found some clues. The patterns on it looked messy and disorderly. At most, they gave off a murderous aura. However, when Tianyang took a closer look, he noticed something different. When he injected his vital essence, it flowed on the patterns and condensed on the sword's edge. It actually added some murderous intent. This pattern is actually an extremely brilliant talisman seal. I didn't expect the killing sword to have such an extraordinary background. Tianyang sighed. Then, he began to read the Blood Drinker's Sword's additional skill. Blood Drinker's Sword. The killing sword comes with its own skill. There are 3 moves in total. They can be classified as Earth Class, Middle Class sword techniques. The first move, Soul Suppressing. When attacking, it draws on its own murderous intent to intimidate others. The stronger the murderous intent and the higher the cultivation, the stronger the intimidating effect. The second move, Blood Drinker's Sword. When attacking, it can cause irreparable injuries to the opponent's flesh and blood. It can also absorb the life essence to replenish itself. After reading the first 2 moves, Tianyang nodded slightly. This Blood Drinker's Sword did not seem to be an active skill. These 2 moves were added to itself when attacking. They were considered passive skills. In other words, even if Tianyang used the killing sword to perform the Soaring Sky Sword, the Sky-Shattering Sword, the Sunset Sword Technique, or the Aurora Sword Technique, they would all have the effects of Soul Suppressing and Blood Drinker's Sword. Tianyang did not care much about Soul Suppressing. He had the soul of a peak ascension state. If he wanted to intimidate others, he did not need to perform sword techniques. A soul shock would suffice. This soul-suppressing pill was, at best, just icing on the cake. However, Blood Drinker's Sword was very different. It could not only severely injure the opponent, but also absorb the opponent's life essence to replenish itself. This was a demonic skill. If he could devour the life essence of others in the middle of a battle, then he would be able to win for sure. Whether it was a battle of attrition or an ordinary battle, blood drinking was extremely effective. This was something that even Tianyang's Aurora sword art could not compare to. Just this effect alone was enough for the Blood Drinker's Sword to be ranked as an Earth-grade martial technique. 2 swords are already so powerful. I wonder what the final 3 sword will be like. 3 swords, Blood Sacrifice. As this thought appeared in Tianyang's mind, the information of the 3rd sword was transmitted to Tianyang's mind. It was as if these 4 words had formed blood-red characters in Tianyang's soul sea. Tianyang was a little surprised when he read the information of the 3 swords. Unlike the passive skills of soul suppression and bloodthirst, this blood sacrifice was actually an active skill. Moreover, it was a desperate counterattack that could kill 1,000 enemies but hurt 800 of his own men. Blood sacrifice uses blood essence as a sacrifice to condense endless killing intent. Once used, one's vitality will be greatly damaged, but one's combat strength will increase greatly. Seeing this, Tianyang's eyes shone with a dazzling light. This increase in combat strength could not be quantified, but Tianyang could calculate how much this increase was by comparing it to his own situation. There were 3 levels of blood sacrifice. The first level was just an ordinary blood sacrifice. It was considered a berserk level that did not affect one's intelligence, but the effect was not very strong. This level of blood sacrifice could increase Tianyang's combat strength by about 20 to 30%. Don't underestimate this 20 to 30% increase. To the Tianji Sword Emperor, 10% of his combat strength was already very precious. If it could be increased by 20 to 30%, then Tianyang's combat strength would definitely increase by a level. The second level was the blood sacrifice. However, the blood sacrifice would only damage one's vitality, but the blood sacrifice would cause one's vitality to be greatly damaged. Once the second level of blood sacrifice was used, the consumption was huge, but the effect was also very strong. Once the blood sacrifice was made, Tianyang's entire body would be enveloped by something called the blood spirit battle soul. His defensive strength would increase by 60%, and his offensive strength would increase by 50%. Of course, if Tianyang used other enhanced techniques, it would naturally not be so terrifying. However, if he only used the second level of blood sacrifice, Tianyang's overall combat strength would increase by as much as 40%. That was 3 times that of the first level. The second level was already so terrifying. Tianyang also looked at the third level. When he saw the third level, Tianyang's expression became much more serious. The third level was much stronger than the first and second levels. However, the side effects were equally terrifying. The third level, burning one's lifespan, sacrificing one's lifespan in exchange for endless combat strength. Once the third level of blood sacrifice is used, I will lose at least 2 or 3 years of my lifespan. At most, I will fall into old age. However, the more I consume, the stronger my combat strength will be. Just 1 year of lifespan is enough to double my combat power. It's a pity that the price is too high. Tianyang sighed with emotion. This blood sacrifice was indeed abnormally powerful. However, Tianyang did not intend to use the third level of blood sacrifice. After all, Tianyang was the Tianji Sword Emperor. If the third level of blood sacrifice fell into the hands of others, they might regard it as a treasure, and there might be a possibility of using it. However, for Tianyang, if he really fell into a desperate situation, the third level of blood sacrifice would be useless. After all, at that point, how could Tianyang not activate his soul at the peak of the ascending heaven state? Once activated, Tianyang would be almost invincible, and the third level of blood sacrifice would naturally be useless. However, although the price of activating the third level of blood sacrifice was smaller than shortening one's lifespan, it was still huge. If he was not careful, his cultivation might even regress. Although the last skill is a bit useless, it's still not bad. I've gained a lot from this battle. Tianyang grinned and waved the killing sword in his hand. A faint but murderous sword light shot out. The sword light shot out, stirring up waves in the air. In the next moment, it swept past a forest. The strange thing was that the sword light was just a casual move. It did not contain a trace of true ether. It was purely produced because Tianyang's cultivation of swordsmanship was too profound. However, many trees still died. Drinking blood is not just drinking blood. It's drinking the essence of life, and even the power of life. Seeing this, Tianyang sighed and put the killing sword away. Then, Tianyang glanced at Ling Yuhan, who was guarding outside, and a gratified smile appeared on his face. Then he took out countless spiritual stones and placed them aside. After forming a simple spiritual gathering formation, he began to cultivate. My cultivation is still too low. Now that I'm in the Northern Wilderness secret territory, the spiritual chi of heaven and earth is abundant. It's perfect for me to break through to the next level. Chapter 215. In the past month, many things had happened in the Northern Wilderness secret realm. Countless relics were discovered by the geniuses of various countries. Among them, there was no lack of relics left behind by high-level masters of the essence transformation realm. However, most of these relics were at the level of Hao Yu's cave, and some were even inferior. Even if they were stronger, they couldn't compare with those that Tianyang had been to. One was the Bright Moon Immortal Cave, which was already firmly standing at the top of all the historical remains. The other was the Spiritual Fire Altar. The Spiritual Fire Altar sealed the elementary, third-grade spiritual fire of annihilation. To Tianyang, even 10 Bright Moon Immortals caves piled up together could not compare. Moreover, there's also a ruin that could not be considered a ruin. It was the burial ground of the nine-tailed fox Qianhan of the Dao Fire Realm. There, Ling Yuhan had awakened the nine-tailed moon fox bloodline and obtained the Nether Spirit Pearl. Bean Soul's Pearl was a treasure comparable to a low-grade spiritual artifact. After being slightly refined by Qianhan, it was barely able to reach the level of a middle-grade spirit artifact. Most First Firmament Dao Fire Realm experts were still using supreme-grade treasures. It was an extravagant hope for Second Firmament Dao Fire Realm cultivators to obtain the trashiest low-grade spirit weapon. On the other hand, the Yin Spiritual Pearl was a mid-grade spiritual artifact. From this, one could see how much Tianyang and Ling Yuhan had gained in the Northern Wilderness Secret Realm. Even the strongest genius of Sky Moon Country, Duan Huang, and the strongest genius of Snow Wilderness, Li Feng, were no match for Tianyang. Yi Zhanling and the others also had their own fortuitous encounters. Yi Zhanling came across a ruin left behind by an 8th-level origin transformation cultivator who cultivated in the way of the sword. Inside, he obtained many opportunities, and after coming out, he had already broken through to the 8th level of the Bright Chi realm. Even though Princess Lingling's luck was not as good as Yi Zhanling's, it was still not bad. She found the ruins left behind by a cultivator at the 6th level of the Origin Transformation realm and reached the peak of the 7th level of the Bright Chi realm. As for Yi Tianxiang and the third prince, who had a grudge with Tianyang, they heard that Tianyang had killed the Duan clan's 9th level Bright Chi realm cultivator and the Snow Wilderness 9th level Bright Chi realm cultivator, Feng Yan. All of them were so scared that they didn't dare to show their faces. They were afraid that Tianyang would remember all of them who had offended him in a bad mood. They didn't even dare to show their faces, let alone look for opportunities. The people sent by Duan Huang from Sky Moon Country and Li Feng from Snow Waste Country to search for Tianyang also found nothing. The news that was closest to the truth was also extremely rough. It only said that Tianyang had entered the giant Sun Mountain Range. However, the giant Sun Mountain Range was so vast that even a hasty search wouldn't be able to finish in a month's time. Not to mention, the Fusang giant tree that Tianyang and Meng Qi were on had an extremely abundant Yang attribute spiritual energy. For ordinary clear Qi stage cultivators like them, it was a desperate situation. They didn't even dare to go in, so naturally, they wouldn't be able to find Tianyang. The fruitless search caused Duan Huang and Li Feng to be extremely vexed, and their hatred for Tianyang deepened. And in this 1 month, Tianyang had also digested the various opportunities after entering the Northern Wilderness Secret Territory and raised his cultivation to the peak of Clear Chi Stage 7th level. Furthermore, Tianyang had also used his experience of using spiritual fire in his previous life to create the Destruction Sword technique for the Destruction Spiritual Fire. Once integrated with the Destruction Spiritual Fire, its power would be comparable to half a step to the Earth stage. Tianyang had also familiarized himself with the 3 moves of the Killing Sword technique. As for the rest, he didn't need to go into detail. Ling Yuhan, under Qianhan's careful guidance, also learned a lot. However, she couldn't compare to Tianyang. Outside the giant Sun Mountain Range, Tianyang and Ling Yuhan walked out of the scorching heat of the giant Sun Mountain Range and came to the plains between the Inyuan Mountain Range and the giant Sun Mountain Range. This plains was the place with the most opportunities. Therefore, the possibility of meeting others here was also the highest. It had been almost 2 months since the opening of the Northern Wilderness Secret Territory. In other words, in another month, the final 9 steps to heaven would open. Other than the spiritual fire and Qianhan, the 9 steps to heaven would definitely crush the so-called opportunities and abodes left behind by the primordial transformation realm cultivators. The 9 steps to heaven came from different sources. However, without exception, everyone believed that the 9 steps to heaven came from ancient times or even ancient times, at least 10,000 years ago. After all, the great destruction of civilization 10,000 years ago almost destroyed the martial arts of the entire heaven continent. The 9 steps to heaven was too mysterious. It didn't seem like something that could be created in this era. I don't know where Yi Zhanling and the rest went. I don't know what they are doing now. Tianyang and Ling Yuhan were both at the peak of clear chi stage 7th level. Although this level of cultivation was nothing compared to the geniuses of other countries. However, the two of them had the ability to fight against a primordial transformation realm cultivator. Therefore, the two of them were not interested in the opportunities and relics left behind by the primordial transformation realm cultivators. The communication crystal is also disrupted by the abundant spiritual chi of heaven and earth in the northern wilderness secret territory. There is no way to contact them. At this time, Ling Yuhan played with the communication crystal in her hand, but there was no response. She said helplessly. Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly. If that was the case, then the two of them would explore the Great Plains on their own. On the Great Plains, monsters and demonic beasts ran rampant. Not only were there ruins left behind by humans, but there were also the descendants of powerful demonic beasts. Demonic beasts valued bloodlines the most. From Ling Yuhan's awakening of the nine-tailed moon fox bloodline, she was regarded as royalty by Qianhan. The descendants of powerful demonic beasts, as long as their genes didn't mutate too much, were almost all-powerful demonic beasts. Therefore, in this Great Plains, there were countless opportunities. Correspondingly, there were also countless dangers. Tianyang held the map that he got from Feng Qing. Most of the opportunities marked on a map had either been taken by others or were not worth their attention. For a moment, Tianyang and Qianhan did not know where they went. All right, let's go to the 9-step sky staircase. Tianyang smiled and turned to Ling Yuhan. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan nodded slightly. Just as the two of them were about to take a step forward, a terrifying aura suddenly exploded from behind them. Then, a shocking beam of light shot into the sky. The beam of light shot in all directions. Even from 1,000 miles away, it could be seen clearly. The powerful aura within it could be felt clearly. Qianhan, who was hiding in Ling Yuhan's dark soul pearl, was the first to exclaim, "Dao Fire Realm." At this time, Tianyang's eyes narrowed slightly. Then he smiled and said, "Since it's on the way, let's go take a look. Who knows? We might meet some enemies or something like that." Then the two of them kept the map and rushed towards the beam of light without hesitation. At the same time, in every corner of the northern wilderness secret territory, countless people saw the powerful beam of light. They immediately put down their tasks and rushed towards the beam of light. Although they couldn't tell that it was the aura of the Dao Fire Realm like Tianyang and Qianhan, they knew. But they also knew. Chapter 2:16. Qianhan and Tianyang's expressions changed when they sensed the aura of the Dao Fire Realm. They knew very well what kind of mystic realm the Northern Wilderness Mystic Realm was. It was located in the northernmost part of the continent and was extremely desolate. Naturally, there would not be many treasures in the mystic realm. It was already a miracle that the Fusang tree and the Nether Spiritual Pearl had appeared. It was even more shocking that a Dao Fire Realm cultivator like the Haoyu cultivator had appeared. They did not expect another Dao Fire Realm treasure to appear in the Northern Wilderness Mystic Realm. No, the direction of the light pillar. Suddenly, Tianyang's expression changed slightly. He stared at the light pillar for a while and then realized something. He said in surprise, "It's the direction of the Haoyu Cave Abode. The Haoyu Cave Abode has definitely been returned by the Haoyu cultivator. However, other than some minor changes, the important things like the test and the reward have not changed at all. I thought the Haoyu cultivator was crazy. It turns out that the Haoyu cultivator hid the important things behind." Tianyang and Ling Yuhan flew on the road and then laughed. Hearing this, the Nether Spiritual Pearl that was circling Ling Yuhan also emitted a faint light, and Qianhan's voice came out. "Lord Tianyang is right. Although I've been in a deep sleep for the past 10,000 years, I have vaguely sensed the aura of a Dao Fire Realm cultivator recently. However, I did not pay much attention to it that time. After all, it was only a Dao Fire Realm cultivator." Qianhan said. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan, who was sandwiched in the middle and had the lowest experience, did not know whether to laugh or cry. She was her master's disciple and was called Your Highness by Qianhan. She had also awakened the nine-tailed moon fox bloodline, and her cultivation could beat ordinary geniuses. However, the existence of the Dao Fire realm that she still had to look up to was not worth mentioning in the words of Tianyang and Qianhan. Even she could not interrupt the conversation between Tianyang and Qianhan. Her mysterious master and the nine-tailed moon fox Qianhan, who was hiding in her nether spiritual pearl, were both incredible figures. I must train hard in the future. As he flew along the way and listened to the conversation between Tianyang and Qianhan, Ling Yuhan set this ambition in his heart. At this time, the two of them felt that their flying speed was too slow, so they repeated the same trick. Tianyang carried Ling Yuhan on his back and used the secret technique of void treading to fly toward the Bright Moon Cave at an extremely fast speed. Bright Moon Cave. As early as more than a month ago, Tianyang forcefully passed the level and took away all the rewards of the 5 levels. Those who were still stuck in the first level understood one after another. This Bright Moon Immortal's Cave had long since lost its value. When someone really passed the trial and discovered that there was no reward, everyone retreated. Those magic crystal war puppets that had been activated because someone had intruded into Hao Yu's Immortal's Cave had also turned into scrap iron because of the exhaustion of their spirit stones. The Bright Moon Immortal's Cave no longer had anything valuable. However, countless powerful geniuses had gathered in front of Hao Yu's cave dwelling, causing this somewhat desolate place to once again become lively. The Light Pillar is here. The strongest genius of Sky Moon Country, Duan Huang, who had just arrived, looked at the light pillar in front of him and could not help but be pleasantly surprised. Duan Huang had thought that although the light pillar caused a great disturbance, it would not be easy to find it. When he found the source of the light pillar, he was somewhat excited. However, when Duan Huang found the light pillar, although it was not far from Inua Mountain, it still took him some time. Duan Huang's eyes swept across the crowd gathered in front of the light pillar, and his face became gloomy. Humph! These little rascals dare to compete with me for the opportunity. Wait a minute, these people will all die. At this time, accompanied by the sound of something breaking through the air, a figure that was so fast that it could not be seen clearly gradually came to a stop. Then, behind him, many followers arrived. Seeing this scene, Duan Huang's face became even uglier. This was because this person was the strongest genius of Snow Wilderness Country, a genius at the peak of Clear Chi realm like him. Li Feng. If Li Feng wanted to compete with him for the opportunity of the light pillar, then he would have to spend a lot of effort to obtain it. I did not expect that even he would be attracted here. It seems that I'm not the only one who knows that this is the aura of the Dao Fire realm. Duan Huang's face was gloomy. He coldly glanced at Li Feng, then turned his head away. Now, the light pillar was still releasing a powerful aura, soaring into the sky. At this time, Duan Huang suddenly did not want the light pillar to continue. If it continued, it would attract more geniuses like Li Feng. What would happen? Although he was the strongest genius of Sky Moon Country, the strongest of the 3 countries, in the entire Northern Wilderness Secret Territory, he was not the strongest. He was only on par with Li Feng, the strongest of Tianshan Country and Tianyang. Although Duan Huang did not want to admit it, Tianyang, whom he and Li Feng hated so much, was indeed on par with them. In this month, they had studied Tianyang's battle. The more they studied, the more shocked they were. In this battle, Tianyang's strength was no less than theirs. That was why Duan Huang wanted the light pillar to disappear immediately. The more it disappeared, the better. Before he arrived, Duan Huang hoped that the light pillar would last longer. Otherwise, he would not be able to find it. When Duan Huang arrived, Duan Huang hoped that the light pillar would disappear immediately so that there would be fewer competitors. This intention was really ugly. After that, more and more people arrived. The number of people gathered in front of the light pillar increased. However, for some reason, the light pillar was still thick and did not seem to disappear. Seeing this, Duan Huang became even more anxious. The more people there were, the smaller his chance of success. At this time, Tianyang, who had crossed half of the Inua Mountain and the Great Plains, finally arrived. Tianyang landed from midair. Looking at the geniuses gathered in front of the light pillar, he chuckled. Before the opening of the Northern Wilderness Secret Territory, each country that gathered outside only brought a dozen geniuses. Even our Snowgale country only brought a single digit. The most we had was about 50. All in all, there are only about 200 or 300 geniuses in the Northern Wilderness Secret Territory. Now, there are more than 100 people in front of the light pillar. Moreover, it's still increasing. Tianyang laughed. The chi of the Tao Fire Realm elites is more attractive than the spiritual fire. That's because they don't know how powerful Master Tianyang's elementary grade 3 spiritual fire is. Even Sea of Soul Realm experts would go crazy for a spiritual fire of that level. If it falls into their hands, it will only be covered in dust. They are short-sighted. Of course, they only know about the Fire Realm treasures. They don't know about the spiritual fire. Qian Han could not help but mock. These self-proclaimed geniuses made Qian Han, who was born in the Nine-Tailed Fox clan and had seen countless geniuses, extremely unhappy. Hearing this, Tianyang only shrugged. He somewhat understood Qian Han's feelings. However, he did not reply. Instead, he walked in with Ling Yuhan. Chapter 2:17. Why did the light pillar disappear all of a sudden? Seeing the light pillar disappear all of a sudden, everyone was shocked. They were just chatting with acquaintances and were not ready for battle. At this moment, Duan Huang saw the light pillar disappear and could not help but feel happy. This damn light pillar finally disappeared. Then, Duan Huang scanned the crowd and realized that Li Feng was the only one who could pose a substantial threat to him. He was even more confident now. This treasure that could emit the aura of the Tao Fire Realm and explode such a light pillar would definitely fall into his hands. As Tianyang had just walked into this place and was in an inconspicuous corner, no one noticed him. Seeing the light pillar disappear all of a sudden, they were also shocked, but they quickly recovered. Ling Yuhan, who was beside him, saw the sudden change in Tianyang's expression and immediately understood. She held the precious pearl of the Yin spirit in her hand, and the true Yuan in her body fluctuated slightly. If a battle really broke out immediately, then they could immediately enter the best battle mode. The light pillar is gone. Hao Yu's cave abode is gone. At this moment, some people who knew that there was a Hao Yu's cave abode were also shocked. That was a cave abode left behind by a Hao Yu cultivator. Although it was already worthless, how could it disappear all of a sudden? That was a cave abode left behind by a Tao Fire Realm cultivator from Hao Yu. When the Northern Wilderness Secret Territory could destroy it. At this moment, an old voice suddenly sounded. I, a Hao Yu cultivator, have traveled the continent for more than 500 years. Today, in this Hao Yu's cave abode, I leave my treasure. My martial arts originated from the Northern Wilderness region. The Northern Wilderness region has done me a great favor. Therefore, I leave behind a treasure for the Northern Wilderness region cultivators. This treasure is called the Moon Armor. It is a quasi-spiritual weapon. It is of no use to me, but it can be used to benefit the Northern Wilderness region cultivators. The old voice sounded. Hearing this, everyone who was waiting around went crazy. Mortal weapons, precious weapons, and even more powerful spiritual weapons. Most body refinement realm cultivators used mortal weapons. Only the strong ones could obtain inferior grade precious weapons. In the Aura Bright realm, the most they could obtain were mid-grade artifacts. High-grade artifacts were too powerful for cultivators in the Aura Bright realm. Even if they obtained them, they wouldn't be able to utilize much of their power. As for spirit artifacts, even if they were quasi-spirit artifacts, they were still treasures used by experts at the first level of the Tao Fire Realm. These Aura Bright Realm cultivators hadn't expected that this Bright Moon cultivator would actually leave behind a quasi-spirit artifact. That was a spirit artifact. This Bright Moon cultivator said that he wanted to repay and benefit the Northern Wilderness region. I believe him. However, it doesn't make sense for him to casually give out a quasi-spiritual weapon. At this moment, Tianyang suddenly frowned and said, The Yin Spirit Pearl in Ling Yuhan's hand flickered and emitted Qianhan's voice. Lord Tianyang is right. I have sensed the aura of this How You cultivator before. He is only at the first level of the Tao Fire Realm. How could such a cultivator let a quasi-spirit artifact be given away like this? You have to know that some of the weaker cultivators at the first level of the Tao Fire Realm are using supreme-grade artifacts. Even if this bright moon cultivator had some fortuitous encounter and didn't need this quasi-spirit artifact moon battle armor, it would still be better for him to give it to others than to leave it here and give it to some cultivators of the primordial transformation realm. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan also sank into deep thought. She didn't have the foresight of Tianyang and Qianhan, nor did she have the foresight of the Sky Pole Sword Emperor, who was able to plan everything ahead of time. However, even if she didn't know how to, she could learn. As her master, Tianyang was more than happy to teach her. Master is truly unfathomable. Ling Yuhan looked deeply at Tianyang and sighed in her heart. However, this bright moon cultivator said that it was a quasi-spirit artifact, so it must be a quasi-spirit artifact. Although there aren't many cultivators in the northern wilderness region who can break through to the Tao Fire Realm, they still have the ability to appraise artifacts. I'd like to see what's so special about this moon battle armor, that even the bright moon cultivator would throw it out. Tianyang laughed. Ling Yuhan nodded slightly. They had crossed almost half of the northern wilderness secret realm just for this. Naturally, they couldn't return empty-handed. However, my treasure is not something that ordinary people can obtain. Therefore, in the Bright Moon Cave abode that I left behind, only those who have broken through the 4th level and learned the inferior Earth-class martial arts technique, the Moon Shadow movement technique, can obtain it. I've set up a light door here. Only those who use the Moon Shadow movement technique can enter and obtain the Moon Battle Armor. The Bright Moon cultivator's aged voice reverberated between heaven and earth. Then a ray of light flashed, and a moon-white light door appeared in front of everyone. However, everyone was dumbfounded when they heard this. What was going on? So many of them had come here just to drink the northwest wind, the specialty of this place. Only those who had broken through the 4th level and learned the inferior Earth-class martial arts technique, the Moon Shadow movement technique, could break through the light door and obtain the treasure. Then wouldn't those who had never been to the Bright Moon Cave abode be spectators? Damn it, this Bright Moon cultivator is really despicable. If he left behind an opportunity, then leave behind an opportunity. Why did he set up a test? Bullshit Moon Shadow movement technique, bullshit Bright Moon Cave abode. This Bright Moon cultivator is clearly fishing for fame. Duan Huang gritted his teeth so hard that they were about to shatter. He glared at the moon-white light door angrily, as if the anger in his eyes was about to burn it to ashes. To think that he had made so many plans to seize the treasure. Now it was all for naught. They had racked their brains to come here as soon as possible, ready to seize it at any time. At this moment, they could only watch as others walked in to obtain the battle armor. Duan Huang had spent some time preparing to seize the treasure, but it was all for someone else. As for the others, their faces were filled with regret and annoyance. They hated themselves for not exploring the Bright Moon Cave abode. Those who had entered the Bright Moon Cave abode looked at each other in dismay. That mysterious black-clothed youth was also somewhat dazed. He had also been to the Bright Moon Cave abode. With his strength, breaking through the 2nd level was already his limit. When he had passed the 1st level, he discovered that there was nothing except a letter from the Bright Moon cultivator. He also deduced that the following rewards had all been swallowed by Tianyang. Therefore, he did not break through. At this moment, those who had seen Tianyang's invincible might in the Bright Moon Cave abode suddenly brightened. They remembered that monstrous youth whose name they did not know. That youth might have broken through the 4th level and practiced the Moon Shadow movement technique. At this moment, Tianyang's expression was somewhat strange. Ling Yuhan, who knew about Tianyang's experience, also chuckled. Master, this quasi-spiritual weapon, Moonlight Battle Armor, is definitely yours. Chapter 218. Who's that? Why is he in front of the light door? Is he trying to rush into the light door? That's impossible. No one here has ever entered the Hallyu Cave abode, passed the 3rd stage, reached the 4th stage, and mastered the Moon Shadow body skill. Is he trying to force his way in? Heh, the light door left behind by Dao Fire Realm Elite is extremely powerful. If he wants to rush in, he's digging his own grave. Seeing Tianyang in front of the light door, the crowd was shocked and began to discuss. However, Duan Huang and Li Feng did not join in the discussion. Instead, they stared at Tianyang with bloodshot eyes and roared. Tianyang, you killed my brother and humiliated my Sky Moon country, Snowfield country. How dare you appear in front of me? Give me your life. Li Feng and Duan Huang roared at the same time. The true core of the bright Qi realm circulated rapidly. In the next moment, the two of them were in front of Tianyang. What? He's Tianyang? The Tianyang who is on par with Li Feng and Duan Huang? He's so young. He's so young. Don't tell me there's something fishy going on. However, Tianyang has a huge grudge against Li Feng and Duan Huang. After offending 2 geniuses, he still dares to appear. This Tianyang has guts. No matter how good he is, he'll definitely die if he's surrounded by 2 geniuses. Hearing Li Feng and Duan Huang's roar, the crowd understood that this young man was the one who had fought with dozens of people a month ago and killed 80% of them. Tianyang became famous after that battle. At this moment, Li Feng and Duan Huang were already in front of Tianyang. Dragon Turtle Fist, Snowstorm Saber. Li Feng and Duan Huang roared at the same time. A giant fish shadow and a dazzling saber radiance formed in an instant and charged towards Tianyang. Seeing this, the crowd was shocked. Li Feng and Duan Huang were indeed the most powerful geniuses in the Northern Wilderness secret territory. The moment he made his move, he already had such a ferocious power. Then, the crowd looked at Tianyang and thought in their hearts. Li Feng and Duan Huang were both furious. They definitely used 120% of their strength. Even if Tianyang's strength was comparable to one of the two, Tianyang would definitely die if he was surrounded by 2 geniuses. At this moment, Tianyang merely chuckled in the face of these 2 killer moves. How dare you show off in front of me with this lousy fist technique and lousy sword technique? Tianyang coldly shouted. The killing sword on his back was unsheathed, and a monstrous killing intent bloomed from Tianyang's body. An unparalleled aura seemed to want to shock the surrounding people. In fact, just an invisible aura made some people turn pale and take a few steps back. He looked at Tianyang with fear in his eyes. As for Tianyang, he looked at the killing sword in his hands in shock. Ever since the killing sword had leveled up to an upper-grade treasure weapon, it had undergone a metamorphosis. To think that it would turn out to be this extraordinary. However, the more extraordinary it was, the better. No matter how many moves you have, in front of me, you're nothing. I'll break you with one strike. Tianyang coldly laughed. The killing sword in his hands emitted a bright light. A sword light shot out from the killing sword. Sky Sword Art, First Sword Sky Piercing. Following this, the incomparably sharp and domineering Tianling slash was unleashed. The suppression of the sword Dao suppressed the entire place, and the supreme sword glow collided with the dragon turtle tyrannical fist and the snowflake drifting zero saber art. Boom! A deafening explosion was heard. The sound waves were so strong that it was as if they were real. It shook everyone's organs and blood, and their faces turned pale. The battle between 2 geniuses was so terrifying. Even the aftershocks could injure them. At this moment, in the distance, the Yin spiritual pearl in Ling Yuhan's hand glowed slightly. Qian Han was a little surprised. These 2 fellas are not bad. Although they don't have good foresight to actually attack Lord Tianyang, their talents are considered average. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan was shocked. How high was Qian Han's foresight? Even Qian Han said that their talents were average, and Tianyang was only at the peak of the clear Qi realm. There was a gap of 2 levels. Could it be don't worry? Not to mention 2 average talents at the peak of the clear Qi realm. Even if there were 200 top talents at the peak of the clear Qi realm, they wouldn't be able to withstand a single blow from Lord Tianyang. Lord Tianyang is just too lazy to use his killing moves on these ants, Qianhan said confidently. Soon, her confidence was confirmed. Boom! Another loud explosion was heard. In the arena, waves of sharp and powerful energy shot out in all directions. At this moment, Tianyang's smile disappeared. The inner yuan in his body vibrated. Tianling's sword, which was still entangled with the dragon turtle tyrant fist and the blizzard floating zero blade, suddenly exploded with a dazzling light, directly destroying the two killing moves. In the next moment, Tianling's sword once again burst forth with terrifying speed, heavily slashing at the two of them. Puffed. Li Feng and Duan Huang both spat out a mouthful of blood. Their faces turned pale as they retreated a few steps, looking at Tianyang in disbelief. They were both at the peak of the clear Qi realm. Tianyang was only at the peak of the clear Qi realm, 2 levels higher than him, and it was 1 against 2. Tianyang was actually able to break their moves and force them to retreat. This Tianyang was actually such a monster. Seeing the 2 great geniuses retreat in defeat, the surrounding people also revealed a look of horror. In their opinion, Tianyang, who was only at the peak of the clear Qi realm, was facing 2 geniuses at the peak of the clear Qi realm. He would definitely be crushed to death. But with just 1 move, Tianyang had forced 2 geniuses to retreat. This kind of battle prowess left them in awe. If it weren't for the fact that the thing inside the glowing door is much more valuable than the 2 of you. Otherwise, I would have killed the 2 of you on the spot. Looking at the pale faces of the 2 geniuses, Tianyang chuckled. They did not dare to make a move. When the 2 geniuses heard this, their faces twitched. Although they did not make a move, the anger in their eyes burned even brighter. However, Tianyang did not care about the anger of his 2 defeated opponents. With a hearty laugh, he used the lunar shadow movement technique and stepped into the glowing door. He did not specifically cultivate the lunar shadow movement technique. After all, the lunar shadow movement technique was inferior to the dragon subduing steps. But if he wanted to enter the glowing door, it was more than enough. Seeing Tianyang's back disappear into the glowing door, Duan Huang lowered his head, his eyes filled with malice. This kid is too strong. He's only 15 or 16 years old. If he grows up, I'm afraid even I won't be his match. This kid can't be left alive. Li Feng and Duan Huang's eyes flashed with malice as they made a decision. Chapter 219. Using the lunar shadow movement technique, Tianyang easily entered the door of light. The moment he stepped through the door of light, Tianyang felt the space around him fluctuate slightly. In the next moment, Tianyang arrived in a white space. He can actually create a small space. Although it's not very stable, this Haiyu cultivator's understanding of the Tao of space is extraordinary. Looking at the white space around him and the door of light that had already disappeared behind him, Tianyang muttered to himself. At this moment, an illusory light flashed in front of Tianyang. It twisted and condensed into an old figure. The figure was old and had white hair, but there were not many wrinkles on his face. He wore a white robe and exuded a powerful aura. He was at the first heaven of the Tao fire realm. Seeing this, Tianyang raised an eyebrow. It seemed that this person was the Haiyu cultivator. I am the Haiyu cultivator. I roamed the northern wilderness region and traveled the entire sky continent. I am famous. Once, in a secret realm, I obtained a quasi-spiritual weapon, the moon armor. Unexpectedly, this moon armor caused my cultivation to be unable to improve. Looking at Tianyang in front of him, the Haiyu cultivator spoke slowly. Hearing this, Tianyang was stunned. Unable to improve? Then, Tianyang's lips curled into a smile. Indeed, there was something wrong with this quasi-spiritual weapon, the moon armor. Although this moonlight battle armor contains the power and aura of my bright moon Tao, there is a strange sort of thing covering it. I was ignorant back then. After obtaining this treasure, I immediately put it on. Unexpectedly, that strange aura transferred to my body and sealed my cultivation, said the Haiyu cultivator. The Haiyu cultivator said, with a bitter expression on his face. He never thought that the quasi-spiritual weapon that he had risked his life to obtain would become his nightmare. Although a Tao Fire Realm cultivator could live for 1,000 years, if he wanted to continue living, he still needed to improve his cultivation. How you had been cultivating for more than 500 years. If his cultivation didn't progress, then he would soon die from the end of his lifespan. Many people cultivated for the sake of immortality, but a pseudo-spiritual artifact had severed the path of immortality for how you cultivators. Youngster, you have broken through the 4th stage of the How You realm that I left behind, and have even learned the moon shadow movement technique. This means that you and I are fated. At this time, the bright moon cultivator stopped talking. He looked at the Tianyang in front of him and sighed. Although this moonlight battle armor is a quasi-spiritual weapon, it's extremely dangerous. Although I've already endured most of the strange aura on it, it's still very dangerous. However, if you want to use it, perhaps the remnant strange aura on it might possess you. Make your choice. Do you want to pay the price and challenge the moonlight battle armor? Or do you want to protect yourself and leave this place? Then, the bright moon cultivator flipped his wrist and a silver light flashed. Then, an azure armor appeared in the bright moon cultivator's hand. Seeing this, Tianyang's eyes moved, and he looked at the azure armor. The naked eye couldn't see anything, but Tianyang's soul, which was at the peak of the Heaven Ascension realm, could clearly see that the moonlight battle armor seemed to be undamaged. However, on the azure surface, there was a black stream of air that twined and corroded the moonlight battle armor. Why does this aura seem a little familiar? Tianyang's face darkened as he stared at the moonlight battle armor. At the same time, the bright moon cultivator spoke. I don't know the origin of the strange aura on the moonlight battle armor, but it seems that all the major factions in the central region are extremely wary of it. Make your choice. Do you want this moonlight battle armor or not? A glint of light flashed in the depths of the bright moon cultivator's eyes. Hearing this, Tianyang also fell into hesitation. The strange aura on the moonlight battle armor was somewhat familiar to him, as if he had seen it somewhere before. Moreover, there was a trace of fear in the depths of his soul. That was the fear of the Tianji Sword Emperor. There weren't many things in the world that could make the Tianji Sword Emperor so wary. Was this strange aura one of them? This seems to be demonic chi, the demonic chi of the otherworld demons. At this moment, Tianyang's pupils shrank. Looking at the moonlight battle armor, he thought of the origin of this strange aura. Otherworld demons. 10,000 years ago, they were a scourge and a huge threat to the Sky Continent. Back then, Tianyang had used the sword in his hand to kill many otherworld demons. However, 10,000 years later, it seemed that the otherworld demons had also suffered the great calamity of the destruction of their civilization and had almost disappeared without a trace. Tianyang had been reborn for so long, but he hadn't even heard of their name. He originally thought that the otherworld demons had disappeared, but he hadn't expected to discover the aura of the otherworld demons on the moonlight battle armor. Cultivator, how you? Where did you get this moonlight battle armor? After Tianyang reacted, he immediately asked with a cold light flashing in his eyes. This otherworld demon had been silent for 10,000 years. Now it wanted to invade the Sky Continent again. In his previous life, Tianyang could kill the otherworld demons and make them tremble in fear. In this life, he could do the same. I got it from a mystic realm in the realm of spirit martial on the continent. As for its earlier origin, I don't know. Although the How You cultivator didn't understand why Tianyang had such a huge reaction, he still explained it clearly. Hearing this, Tianyang's expression changed slightly. He removed the coldness on his face and secretly thought in his heart. He had to make a trip to the realm of spirit martial in the future. By the way, do you want this moonlight battle armor or not? At this moment, the How You cultivator also remembered his purpose and asked. Hearing this, Tianyang also remembered and the corners of his mouth curled up. Yes, previously, he didn't know what this strange aura was, so he was naturally afraid. However, now that he knew that it was the demonic chi of the otherworld demons, he was naturally not so afraid. Many Outer Realm demons had dyed his hands, not to mention this aura. Good. You have guts. Then, this moonlight battle armor belongs to you. Hearing this, the How You cultivator laughed and pushed the moonlight battle armor in front of Tianyang. Tianyang also stretched out his hand and took the moonlight battle armor. The moonlight battle armor was azure and seemed to contain the power of the moon spirit. Not only did this moonlight battle armor have amazing defensive power, but it also promoted the cultivator's cultivation. This moon spirit chi had allowed Ling Yuhan to gain quite a bit, not to mention the moon spirit chi that was even more condensed than the moon spirit chi. In terms of size and appearance, it was not much different from ordinary battle armor. It was just that it was more suitable for Tianyang's body. It was as if this moonlight battle armor was tailor-made for Tianyang. Not bad. Wear it and you won't have to worry about being affected in battle. Seeing this, the corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up. Seeing this, the How You cultivator also smiled, and the mark he left behind dissipated. At the same time, the heavenly demon chi that was entrenched on the moonlight battle armor suddenly erupted. Tianyang was not surprised at all. He immediately sat cross-legged on the ground and circulated the divine desolate heaven spirit art. A mere demonic chi dares to be arrogant in front of this emperor? The corners of Tianyang's mouth curled up. He had thousands of methods to deal with this demonic chi. Chapter 220. Although the extraterrestrial demons were powerful, they were not invincible. In his previous life, the Sky Cloud continent had developed countless methods to deal with the extraterrestrial demons. As the strongest cultivator in the continent, Tianyang could not ignore it. Moreover, the extraterrestrial demon aura on the moonlight armor was only a small amount. After a few hours, the sky demon's aura, which was probably at the second level Dao Fire realm, was refined by the sky sun. The sky firmament sword even devoured some of it. Tianyang was surprised. He had thought that the sky cloud sword could only devour martial souls. He did not expect that it could also devour extraterrestrial demon aura. Outside the light door, since no one except Tianyang knew the moon shadow body technique, most of the people left not long after Tianyang had rushed in. After all, there were countless opportunities in the northern wilderness mystery land. Even if the treasure left by the bright moon realm celestial demon was very powerful, if only Tianyang could obtain it, then what was the point of staying? There was no need to hang on to one tree. However, while most of the people thought so, the rest did not. Duan Huang and Li Feng wore cold expressions as they stared at the still, glowing door, while their hearts were filled with anger. Tianyang had not only killed his brother and disgraced Sky Moon Country, but he had also stolen the treasure left by the Bright Moon Realm celestial demon right in front of him. How could Duan Huang not take revenge for this? On the other side, Li Feng's reason for staying was almost the same as Duan Huang's. Around the two of them, the other disciples of Sky Moon Country and Snowland Country had also come and surrounded the light door. There were others who stayed to take advantage of the situation and steal the spiritual weapon from Tianyang. Although Tianyang had not come out yet, he had already become the target of public criticism. Tianyang is so arrogant that he dares to provoke Sky Moon Country and Snowland Country. Now that he has been targeted by these two countries, he will die. Duan Huang snorted as he stared coldly at the light door with a gloomy face. Hearing this, the people around him nodded in agreement. The surrounding people were filled with murderous intent. Tianyang, you killed Feng Yin and many other geniuses of the Snowland Empire. You must avenge this great debt. When he comes out, we will. Li Feng's face was gloomy. Just as he finished speaking, he cast his gaze towards the numerous Snow Wilderness disciples that he had recruited. When the disciples of Snow Wilderness heard this, they all understood what Li Feng meant and shouted in unison. Kill Tianyang and seize the treasure. Kill Tianyang and seize the treasure. Loud and clear shouts resounded through the sky. In other places, people could not help but worry for Tianyang. Li Feng and Duan Huang were so generous that they gathered almost all the geniuses of the two countries just for a Tianyang at the peak of the 7th level of the Bright Chi realm. Although Tianyang had defeated the combined forces of Li Feng and Duan Huang, Everyone knew that Li Feng and Duan Huang had not used their killing moves. Although Tianyang had defeated them, it did not mean that he could defeat the combined forces of the two. Moreover, there were a total of 58 geniuses from the two countries here. If Tianyang came out, he would most likely be in trouble, Qian Han said worriedly. Qian Han, don't worry. Master is invincible. Hearing Qian Han's worried voice, Ling Yuhan could not help but laugh. Hearing this, Qian Han nodded slightly. Master Tianyang is so powerful. How could he fall at the hands of a bunch of small fries? It seems that I have worried too much. At this moment, the focus of everyone's attention was on the light door. Then, Tianyang walked out of the light door. He's out. Tianyang is out. Seeing Tianyang walk out, everyone's face changed as they shouted in unison. Duan Huang and Li Feng's eyes narrowed as they saw the azure moonlight armor on Tianyang's body. Then, greed flashed in their eyes as they snorted coldly. The inner yuan in their bodies surged, and the aura of a peak clear chi realm level 9 cultivator exploded. Tianyang, how dare you steal the moonlight armor? Hand it over obediently, and we'll spare your life. Duan Huang and Li Feng shouted in unison. At this moment, Tianyang, who had just used the power of the moonlight armor to reopen the light door, was stunned for a moment before coming to his senses. These two people were going to kill him and steal his treasure. Tianyang, a treasure like the moonlight armor is not something a piece of trash from a small country like you can possess. Hand it over obediently, and you won't die. Tianyang, don't make a mistake. Li Feng shouted coldly. Hearing this, Duan Huang nodded as he stared dangerously at Tianyang. Behind them, the 58 disciples from the two countries also channeled their inner yuan and emitted a powerful aura. They merged together and charged towards Tianyang. The aura was monstrous and terrifying. Under the combined attack of the 58 disciples and the others, there was a total of 100 people. Even a transformed primordial realm cultivator would lose his life. It's over. Tianyang is done for. It wasn't easy to get the moonlight armor, but now he has to pay with his life. On the other side, the young man in black was pale as he looked at Tianyang, who was in the middle of the chaotic battle and was about to face the combined attack of 100 people. No one thought that Tianyang could survive. Facing the combined attack of 100 people, Tianyang was doomed. Facing such a crushing attack, Tianyang's expression did not change. The corner of his mouth curled up slightly. He waved his hand, and the inner yuan in his body surged. Then he smiled faintly. Why do you have to be so pretentious? If you want to kill me and take my treasure, then come. Putting on an act is disgusting. Hearing this, Li Feng and Duan Huang's expressions turned cold. It seems that you don't know what's good for you. Then, don't blame us for being merciless. Kill him. Li Feng and Duan Huang roared. The inner yuan in their bodies surged as they charged towards Tianyang. Dragon Turtle World Fist. Snowstorm Floating Zero Blade. The two of them repeated the same moves. The inner yuan in their bodies circulated and the monstrous aura merged into one. The shadows of their fists and blades blasted towards Tianyang. Seeing this, Tianyang's expression did not change. He unsheathed the killing sword on his back and held it in his hand. Then, the aura around Tianyang suddenly changed. An unparalleled pressure swept out in all directions. With a sword in hand, he was unparalleled in the world. Then, Tianyang faced the combined attack of the two and sneered. Don't try to show off your petty tricks. Sunset swordsmanship. First style, sunset decay. The killing sword in his hand exploded with rays of light. A setting sun condensed in the blink of an eye. A majestic sword light erupted from the setting sun, fiercely attacking the two of them. Stubborn resistance. Seeing this, Li Feng and Duan Huang sneered. Their inner yuan surged and collided with the setting sun without any fear. Boom! A terrifying explosion erupted. The huge sound wave even made some of the people around turn pale. The setting sun also collided with the shadows of the fists and blades. The setting sun sword light collided with the Dragon Turtle World Fist and the snowstorm floating zero blade. They were entangled in midair. He blocked it. Seeing that the setting sun's sword light suddenly stopped, Li Feng and Duan Huang were delighted. At this time, Tianyang smirked. Blocked it? How could the Tianji Sword Emperor's sword move be blocked so easily? Break! Tianyang's lips opened slightly and spat out a word. In the next moment, the setting sun sword light bloomed with rays of light. A violent aura instantly engulfed the shadows of the fists and blades. Then it was destroyed. Chapter 221. Boom! A deafening explosion took place all of a sudden, as if it was going to shatter the eardrums of the crowd. Dazzling light exploded from the center of the collision between Tianyang and the two. Then, a powerful aura shot out in all directions. Boom, boom, boom. The setting sun sword radiance exploded. The previous silence was just to lure the enemy in. Now, Li Feng and Duan Huang had been successfully distracted by Tianyang. Therefore, Tianyang did not hold back. Bastard! The Dragon Turtle Fist and the Blizzard Floating Zero Blade were once again defeated by Tianyang. This time, Tianyang was even more ruthless than the previous time. Tianyang directly used the chi flow between the two of them and their moves to land his attack on the two of them. They spat out a mouthful of blood. The two of them were severely injured, and their auras were slightly weakened. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and attack. At this moment, Li Feng could not help but turn his head and roar. The people who were shocked by Tianyang's sword woke up one by one. Then, everyone shouted and made their moves. Kill Tianyang and take the treasure. Waves of true yuan surged. Between them, there was a tacit understanding between them. Compared to the many times Tianyang had been besieged before, this was much stronger. Countless attacks gathered in the blink of an eye. Not only the people from Snowfield and Sky Moon Country, but even those who Tianyang had never offended also attacked. Their eyes flashed with greed. They all wanted to kill Tianyang and take the treasure. Seeing this, Tianyang's face turned cold. A cold light flashed in his eyes. In his spirit ocean, a powerful aura rose. Heavenly sword, come out! Tianyang roared. The heavenly sword flashed and immediately attached itself to the killing sword. The power of the killing sword increased again. The Sky Cloud sword had already reached the middle grade of the mystic class. Now that it was attached to the killing sword, its power would naturally increase exponentially. Sunset swordplay. Third sword, devour the sun. Tianyang snorted coldly as the true essence in his body surged. His 7 chi seas emitted a blinding light that then turned into a violent sword chi that shot towards a crowd. Compared to sunset decay, the devouring sun sword was many times stronger. The previous sunset decay was able to break Li Feng and Duan Huang's attacks with a single strike, let alone the current devouring sun sword. Damn it! Li Feng couldn't help but shout angrily when he felt the tyrannical attack power of the devouring sun sword light that made their hearts tremble. Attack! I don't believe that there are 100 people here. You can't even deal with a Tianyang. Li Feng shouted angrily. Then he adjusted the chi in his body, gathered his fist again, and attacked the devouring sun sword. Dragon-breaking fist. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his eyebrows. Looking at the light condensing on Li Feng's fist, he sneered. Just this low-grade Earth-class fist technique, and you dare to call yourself Dragon Breaker? 9 refined dragon body, dragon sword divine ability. Slash! Tianyang laughed. The killing sword in his hand shone brightly. Within Tianyang's dragon body, countless dragon energy condensed. Then, the killing sword immediately turned into a huge golden sword that was 10 meters long. An endless amount of dragon might was emitted from the dragon sword. Slash! Tianyang chuckled. The giant dragon sword in his hand immediately slashed towards Li Feng's dragon-breaking fist. Boom! The dragon-breaking fist clashed with the dragon sword and was immediately defeated. Tianyang's sword cultivation was too terrifying. Even if Li Feng used all his trump cards, he still couldn't do anything to Tianyang. The dragon sword was one of Tianyang's trump cards. It was only second to the annihilation, spiritual fire, and the sky sword technique. If Tianyang wasn't under the Fusang tree, due to the strong yang attribute there, he wouldn't have been able to condense the yin-yang dragon core and form the sky dragon body. This dragon sword was definitely not the Jiao Dragon King's sword, but the Sky Dragon Emperor's sword. The moment the Heavenly Dragon Imperial sword appeared, even if it was a second or third level origin transformation stage martial artist, their expression would change drastically. What? Puff! The dragon-breaking fist was instantly defeated. Li Feng wanted to open his mouth and roar in disbelief, but the dragon sword's dragon energy that invaded his body forced him to spit out blood. In Li Feng's body, Tianyang's dragon energy rampaged around, constantly destroying Li Feng's internal organs. Although Li Feng's physical strength was not bad, his internal organs felt like they were being burned. It was extremely uncomfortable. In addition to the previous injuries he suffered, Li Feng's combat strength decreased by 30%. At the same time, the Devouring Sun sword finally broke through the 58 disciples' blockade and rushed into the crowd. Countless screams erupted at the same time. The shrill screams even made the others feel a bone-piercing cold in this hot summer. Tianyang was facing the combined attacks of Li Feng and Duan Huang, and the combined attacks of 100 people, but he was still so relaxed. Tianyang, don't be so arrogant. Give me your life. At this time, seeing that a significant portion of the 100 people were severely injured by Tianyang's sword, Duan Huang, who had been waiting for an opportunity, finally couldn't hold back anymore. Earth lower grade, gale blade technique. It was as if gusts of wind were really condensing on Duan Huang's saber. Gusts of wind condensed on Duan Huang's saber, and even Duan Huang's entire body was shrouded in a storm. Die! Duan Huang roared. He raised a long blade in his hand high and slashed heavily on Tianyang's sword. You want to turn the tide with just you. When the dragon sword was attacked, the corner of Tianyang's mouth curled into a sneer. Someone of this level actually dared to fight him? Aurora swordsmanship. The Aurora swordsmanship itself wasn't powerful. Tianyang didn't make any improvements to the Aurora swordsmanship. However, the Aurora swordsmanship relied on Tianyang's own strength. The stronger Tianyang was, the stronger the Aurora swordsmanship would be. It could even surpass the grade of the Aurora swordsmanship. At this moment, Tianyang was using the dragon sword's superpower to display the Aurora swordsmanship. Naturally, the power of the Aurora swordsmanship was immense. Rip! The gale formed by the gale blade skill was torn apart and destroyed in the blink of an eye. However, the dragon sword didn't change its direction and slashed heavily on Duan Huang. Bang! The dragon sword slashed on Duan Huang's body. However, it didn't kill Duan Huang immediately. Instead, it was blocked. Middle grade treasure armor. Not bad. However, it's still not enough to save your life. Tianyang snorted. This Duan Huang had tried to take his life time and time again. How could he be merciful? Dragon chi flowed on the dragon sword. Tianyang didn't care about his true origin and poured it all into the dragon sword. The dragon sword shone brightly, and a terrifying dragon aura exploded at this moment. However, Tianyang wasn't satisfied. Instead, he continued to activate it. He even poured the spiritual fire of destruction that he had just refined into the dragon sword. Why don't I just kill all of you with one slash? Tianyang suddenly said. Hearing this, Li Feng's face darkened. Arrogant. People of the Snowfield Country and Sky Moon Country, listen to my command. Kill Tianyang. Yes. The 100 people shouted angrily. The true origin in their bodies gathered like a whirlwind and turned into attacks that rushed towards Tianyang. However, Tianyang's expression didn't change. The true origin in his body was finally gathered to the maximum. Sky Sword skill, second slash. Shatter the heavens. Tianyang's indifferent voice rang out. Then, a burning spiritual fire of destruction with the dragon force of destruction shot out. All of the attacks were shattered like tofu, and all of the resistance was like paper, unable to withstand a single blow. The Shatter the Heavens rushed into the crowd like a wolf in a flock of sheep. It was going to be a massacre. Screams were heard. Blood splattered everywhere, and corpses were sent flying. Even Li Feng and Duan Huang, who were at the 9th level of the Bright Chi realm, were no exception. Under the Shatter the Heavens, they were destroyed. Chapter 222. Tianyang had made a name for himself by killing hundreds of people with his sword. When Tianyang killed Li Feng and Duan Huang with his sword, and almost wiped out all the cultivators from Snow Wilderness and Sky Moon Country, no one in the entire Northern Wilderness Secret Territory would think that he was a worthy opponent. Even the strongest of the 4 geniuses, the half-primordial transformation realm cultivator, the number 1 genius of Tianshan Country, would not be able to kill hundreds of people with his sword. Tianyang was invincible in the Northern Wilderness Secret Territory. At this moment, Tianyang, who had just sheathed his sword, suddenly trembled. His face turned pale. If not for the powerful recovery effect of the Divine Wilderness heavenly spiritual art, Tianyang would have fainted from the exhaustion of his true essence. However, even though Tianyang was at his weakest, the black-clothed youth did not dare to move. The person in front of him was Tianyang, who had killed Li Feng and Duan Huang with 1 strike, the most powerful cultivator in the Northern Wilderness Secret Territory. Even though he was in a weakened state, the black-clothed youth did not dare to make a move. If Tianyang had a little bit of true essence left, he could have killed him. The blood-red, yellow-white, and even the color of the mangled corpses was a huge shock to the black-clothed youth. The smell of blood in the air made his heart tremble. Tianyang did not care about the black-clothed youth. He had seen this person before. Even though he was strong, he was at most at the peak of Clear Chi Stage 8. To the current Tianyang, he was not much of a threat. Tianyang took out a few Chi revitalizing pills from his space bag and threw them into his mouth. He did not care about what they were for. He chewed and swallowed all the pills. Then, the pills dissolved and were refined by the spiral meridians, gradually recovering the true essence in Tianyang's body. Master! At this moment, Ling Yuhan could not sit still anymore. She rushed over and opened her space bag, and a large amount of pills appeared in her hand. Master, are you okay? Ling Yuhan was incomparably anxious. At first, he thought that Tianyang could easily deal with Li Feng and Duan Huang, but he did not expect that there was actually a full 100 people besieging Tianyang together. The battle erupted in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint, and, similarly, it ended in the time it took for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. By the time Ling Yuhan reacted, Tianyang had already used the dragon sword Mystique, ignited the annihilation spirit fire, and slashed out with the heaven-shattering sword. He had killed hundreds of people. I'm fine, I just used up a bit. Seeing Ling's true essence's body, the heaven and earth spiritual chi from the surroundings was channeled into his body, replenishing his true essence. Body's true essence was Body's true chi. Tianyang smiled on the surface, but in reality, the 7 ultimate sea of chi in his dantian had almost been sucked dry. The Dragon Sword Divine Power was already a trump card that consumed a lot of true essence. Tianyang only dared to use it casually after he had cultivated his dragon body to the peak. However, he had just refined the flame of destruction not long ago, and Tianyang had not fully mastered it. Rashly using it would consume a lot of true essence. On top of that, Zhang Xian had just learned the heaven-crushing slash from the very beginning. With the 3 trump cards fused into one and executed simultaneously, the prowess was frightening. However, at the same time, the exhaustion was also frightening. With 7 ultimate sea of chi, Tianyang's true essence was comparable to a first-level true essence realm martial artist. However, Tianyang had almost used up all of his true essence. It could be seen how terrifying the 3 trump cards were. It was terrifying to the enemy, but it was also terrifying to oneself. We can't stay here for long. Sky Moon Country and Snow Wilderness Country are almost destroyed, and I have consumed a lot of true essence. If Empyrean Country wants to fish in troubled waters, it will be very troublesome. After recovering half of his true essence, Tianyang said solemnly. He had underestimated the consumption of true essence in this battle. He did not expect that other than the disciples of Sky Moon Country and Snow Wilderness Country, there were also people who wanted to fish in troubled waters. This caused his plan to fall apart. Yes, let's go to Giant Sun Mountain Range. No one dares to go there. Ling Yuhan also nodded. She anxiously looked at Tianyang's pale face. Ever since she knew Tianyang and became his disciple, Ling Yuhan had never seen Tianyang's face so pale. Within the Dark Soul Pearl, Qianhan also looked at Tianyang worriedly. Then, just as the two were about to leave, the black-clothed youth suddenly walked out. "Who are you?" Seeing that the black-clothed young man had blocked his way, Ling Yuhan's expression immediately turned icy cold. The true energy in his body surged unsteadily, and the profound ice sword on his back trembled slightly. It was as if he was about to attack at any moment. Tianyang had consumed a lot of true essence, but Ling Yuhan still had a lot left. "Don't attack. I mean no harm." Seeing Ling Yuhan's dangerous gaze, the black-clothed youth felt as if he was being stared at by an ancient, ferocious beast. He had goosebumps all over his body. In the black-clothed youth's perception, this harmless-looking, beautiful girl seemed to have the strength to kill him with one blow. Moreover, the black-clothed youth also felt that if he said another word, this beautiful girl might really kill him with one blow. This made the black-clothed youth secretly click his tongue. Tianyang himself was a demon, but he did not expect the girl beside him to be so terrifying. "Let me introduce myself first. I'm not from the Northern Wilderness region. I'm from the Firmament Territory in the south of the Northern Wilderness region, across 3 territories. My name is Flying Sword. I'm from Sky Blue College in the Firmament Territory. This time, I came to the Northern Wilderness Secret Land to recruit students." The black-clothed youth, Flying Sword, said. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan's eyes narrowed. "How do I know if you're telling the truth?" Dao Feiyang let out a smile upon hearing this. His interspatial bag shuddered as a blue badge appeared in his hand, emitting a powerful aura. This is the disciple token of Sky Blue College. Other than Sky Blue College, no one else can copy it. Back to the topic, you and your teacher, Tianyang, have met the requirements of Sky Blue College to recruit students. In fact, you've greatly exceeded them. After you leave the Northern Wilderness Secret Land, this small Northern Wilderness region will naturally not continue to restrict your development. Why don't you come to Sky Blue College in the Firmament Territory? That's your stage," Flying Sword said solemnly. Top geniuses like Tianyang and Ling Yuhan were rare even in the Central region, let alone the Northern Wilderness region. His name was Dao Feiyang. Within the Sky Blue Academy, he was considered a strong disciple. At the age of 17, he had already reached the peak of the 8th level of the Clear Chi realm. This level of talent was not bad. However, in front of Tianyang and Ling Yuhan, his talent was overshadowed. Out of admiration, he also invited Tianyang and Ling Yuhan. Hearing this, Ling Yuhan did not know where Sky Blue College was, so naturally, she could not make a decision. Beside Ling Yuhan, Tianyang's eyes flashed. Chapter 223. Does Sky Blue College have anything to do with the Sky Blue Sword sect from 10,000 years ago? Tianyang's heart stirred as he asked. Hearing this, Dao Feiyang was stunned. Then, his expression changed. He looked at Tianyang in a different way. "Who exactly are you? How do you know the secret of Sky Blue College?" Flying Sword's aura suddenly changed and became dangerous. Although he knew that he couldn't defeat Tianyang, he heard about the Sky Blue Sword sect from Tianyang. This was Sky Blue College's biggest secret. Even Dao Feiyang had only found out about it not long ago. "Why are you reacting so strongly? Young man, it's better to be calm." Seeing the change in Flying Sword's expression and how he was about to circulate his inner yuan, Tianyang smiled and patted Flying Sword's shoulder. Flying Sword wanted to dodge, but he was shocked to find that he couldn't move. Didn't Tianyang use up all his inner yuan? How could he still imprison him? Moreover, he didn't see him use his inner yuan. The Sky Pole Sword Emperor's methods were naturally not something a weakling like Dao Feiyang, who was only at the peak of the Clear Chi realm, could understand. Tianyang did not make a move. He only patted Dao Feiyang's shoulder, suppressing the oppressive aura. Flying Sword was even more shocked. Aura wasn't made of inner yuan. Inner yuan was something with a physical body, so it was easy to suppress it. However, aura was different. How could the heavenly sun suppress something as illusory as aura? For a moment, in Dao Feiyang's eyes, Tianyang's originally mysterious and unfathomable image seemed to become even more mysterious. In the martial world, the strong were respected. In Flying Sword's eyes, Tianyang was a strong person who could crush him. Naturally, he had to be in awe. This is not the place to talk. Let's leave first. Don't you find the smell of blood stinging your nose? Tianyang smiled and withdrew his hand. The shackles on the Flying Sword also disappeared. Seeing this, the Flying Sword was even more in awe. He nodded and let Tianyang lead him away from this place. As for the others, after seeing Tianyang's group disappear into the Inua mountain range in a few flashes, they could no longer hold themselves back and charged out. Heavenly Sun had killed 100 people with a single move. Even in the secret territory of the northern wilderness, where there were many opportunities and fortuitous encounters, this news was definitely worthy of being the headline. Unless another treasure of the Dao Fire Realm appeared, Tianyang's name would definitely shake the entire northern wilderness secret territory. In the depths of the Inua mountain range, in a cave. The Inua mountain range was extremely vast. The number of people from the various countries in the northern wilderness region who entered the northern wilderness secret territory was originally less than 1,000. Now that Tianyang had killed more than 100 people, the population density was greatly reduced. After beating up the original owner of the cave and throwing him out, there was no other living thing that could disturb Tianyang's group's conversation. Since Brother Tianyang has already said it, then I can't continue to hide it. My Sky Blue College is indeed related to the Sky Blue Sword sect from 10,000 years ago. Flying Sword sat opposite Tianyang and Ling Yuhan and said, "You could say that our Sky Blue College is the Sky Blue Sword sect from 10,000 years ago. It's just that we're not limited to swords anymore." Hearing this, Tianyang nodded slightly and felt a little emotional. He had been to the Sky Blue Sword sect once in his previous life. At that time, it was a third-grade sect that dominated the entire firmament territory and was famous throughout the entire heaven continent. What kind of concept was a third-grade sect? A ninth-grade sect would have one expert of the origin transformation realm. An eighth-grade sect would have 3 experts of the origin transformation realm. A 7th-grade sect would have at least 10 experts of the origin transformation realm. A 6th-grade sect would have 3 experts of the origin transformation realm. A 5th-grade sect would have 10 experts of the origin transformation realm. A Sea of Spirit realm. A 4th-grade sect would have at least 2 experts of the origin transformation realm. A 3rd-grade sect would even need experts of the origin transformation realm. As for a 2nd-grade sect and a 1st-grade sect, they would need experts of the origin transformation realm. Some powerful 1st-grade sects even had experts of the origin transformation realm who were called emperors. In his previous life, although Tianyang wasn't an expert of the origin transformation realm in the Sky Blue Sword sect, he had practiced in the Sky Blue Sword sect for a period of time. He didn't expect that the Sky Blue Sword sect would still have a legacy after the apocalyptic disaster of civilization destruction. This made Tianyang very happy. It's a pity that the current Sky Blue College no longer has the prestige of the Sky Blue Sword sect. The college president is only an expert of the peak level 2 of the origin transformation realm. They don't even have experts of the origin transformation realm, let alone experts of the origin transformation realm. Flying Sword sighed. Hearing this, Tianyang didn't really care. It was good enough that the Sky Blue Sword sect could continue to exist. As for strength, it wasn't that important. But our Sky Blue College has the legacy of the Sky Blue Sword sect. The college president is the descendant of the Sky Blue Sword sect's young master. 10,000 years ago, the Tianji Sword Emperor who saved the Sky Clouds continent, also practiced in the Sky Blue Sword sect for a period of time. They have a very deep foundation. When Dao Feiyang said this, he became excited. It was obvious that he was proud of the Sky Blue Academy. Our Sky Blue College has countless sword sect manuals. We also have many instructors of the peak level of the Origin Transformation Realm, and even elders of the Origin Transformation Realm to teach us. Brother Tianyang, in this person, the Northern Wilderness region is no longer your stage. Only by entering Sky Blue College can you unleash your greater potential. With your talents, you might be able to become the second Tianji Sword Emperor. Flying Sword said excitedly. Hearing this, Tianyang also smiled. However, this smile was somewhat strange. In front of the real Tianji Sword Emperor, saying that he could become the second Tianji Sword Emperor. However, Tianyang didn't really care. He didn't even listen to Flying Sword's excited introduction. When he heard about the relationship between the Sky Blue Sword sect and Sky Blue College, he had already made up his mind. All right, I understand. You don't have to say any more. Tianyang stood up and smiled. Hearing this, Flying Sword was stunned. Then, he lowered his eyelids and revealed a disappointed expression. Did you guys reject me? Tianyang and Ling Yuhan's talents were something that even the top 10 geniuses of the outer yard of Sky Blue College couldn't compare to. If they were to join Sky Blue College would definitely have a powerhouse. However, hearing Tianyang's merciless interruption, it seemed that Tianyang had rejected his invitation. Who said that? Hearing this, Tianyang raised an eyebrow and smiled. When did I say that? The reason why I interrupted you was because if you were to continue, I wouldn't know how to interrupt. Hearing this, Dao Feiyang's body trembled. He lifted his head and looked at Tianyang with a hopeful look in his eyes. Chapter 2:24. Let's go to Sky Blue College. Tianyang said resolutely. Hearing this, Dao Feiyang immediately fell into ecstasy. If a genius like Tianyang could join Sky Blue College, then his disciple, Ling Yuhan, who also had terrifying talent, would join as well. How could Dao Feiyang not be happy that two top geniuses had joined the Sky Blue Academy all of a sudden? If that's the case, we'll be able to deal with those damn sects and colleges. Dao Feiyang said excitedly. Then, Tianyang saw Dao Feiyang's ecstatic expression and a smile appeared on his face. Although Flying Sword was a little pretentious, he had a pure heart. His loyalty to the college did not seem fake. Then, introduce Sky Blue College to us. I don't even recognize it anymore now that Sky Blue Sword sect has become Sky Blue College. Tianyang said with a smile. Then, Dao Feiyang, who was full of excitement, continued to explain to Tianyang. Just as the three of them were discussing the Sky Blue Academy in the Inuan Mountains, the news of the Sky Sun Sword killing hundreds of people had finally spread throughout the Northern Wilderness Secret Territory. What was the fastest thing in this world? Light? Electricity? Sound? Wind? No, it was news. Almost at the same time that Tianyang and the other two left, the shocking news spread throughout the Northern Wilderness Secret Territory. The hundreds of geniuses in the Northern Wilderness Secret Territory were all shocked. Before this battle, Song Long, the top disciple of Tian Song Nation, was the leader of the four geniuses, followed by Duan Huang, Li Feng, and Tianyang. However, in reality, many people were dissatisfied with Tianyang, who had only recently entered the ranks of the four great geniuses and then disappeared for an entire month after entering. Even without the moon battle armor left behind by the Hallyu cultivator, there would still be many people who would challenge the Tianyang. After all, the Northern Wilderness Secret Realm was not just a place where the various countries in the Northern Wilderness region would fight for their treasures. Powerful sects from other regions would also come to watch. Among the 3,000 territories in Heaven Continent, the Northern Wilderness, which was located in the northernmost part of the continent, was naturally at the bottom of the list. Such a huge territory only had a few transformation origin stage cultivators. Such a domain was naturally the weakest. The other regions, such as the Central region, were filled with powerful cultivators. The origin transformation realm cultivators who were considered to be the best in the northern wilderness region might only be considered as low-level cultivators in the central region. After all, the central region of the continent was filled with spiritual chi, while the northernmost region of the continent, the northern wilderness region, had very little spiritual chi. Naturally, it was impossible for it to produce many powerful cultivators. For ordinary geniuses in the northern wilderness region, go to other regions was the only way for them to stand out and become a martial arts expert. Naturally, the other regions also valued the northern wilderness secret territory trial the most. If one could make a name for himself in the northern wilderness secret realm trial, he would attract the attention of other sections. Naturally, there would be people who would challenge the famous Tianyang. However, when they heard this news, everyone who wanted to use the Heavenly Sun Celestial Emperor as a stepping stone quietly gave up on this idea. Even Li Feng and Duan Huang had died under Tianyang's sword. Perhaps even Song Long would not be a match for the Tianyang. Then, who else could stop the Tianyang? Northern Wilderness Secret Realm, north of the Central Plains. The strongest cultivator of the Tian Song Kingdom, Song Long, was sitting cross-legged in a cave. He was looking at the piece of paper in his hand in amazement. This Tianyang is really out of my expectations. I thought that the strongest cultivators in the Northern Wilderness Secret Realm would be the strongest of the three kingdoms. Who knew that this Tianyang would appear out of nowhere? However, even Li Feng and Duan Huang were able to kill him with a single strike. Furthermore, they brought along 100 cultivators who were at least at the 7th or 8th tier of the Bright Chi realm. If I were to face them, I would most likely die. Song Long sighed. He was originally the strongest cultivator in the Northern Wilderness Secret Realm. He was also the most eye-catching person. If he were to join other sects, he would have the highest chance of going to other regions. However, he did not expect that Tianyang would appear out of nowhere and kill 100 people with one strike. Such a legend had directly suppressed him. Of course, Song Long did not think that he had the ability to block Tianyang's strike. He did not even have the slightest thought of challenging him. It's not long before the 9 steps to Heaven's staircase. If I meet Tianyang, I can make friends with him, Song Long said softly. Then he kept the piece of paper in his hand and sat down cross-legged to cultivate again. On the other side, a sinister-looking man in black looked at the piece of paper in his hand and smiled coldly. Tianyang? I thought that he was just a piece of trash from a small country. I did not expect him to have such achievements. However, the greater his achievements, the more I want to kill him. The Northern Wilderness Domain cannot have such a genius. Song Long, let's not kill him first. Change our target. Kill this Tianyang. The man in black's eyes were cold. He was originally moving at an extremely fast speed. Now that he had changed his direction, his speed became even faster. Perhaps even the Flying Sword did not know that there was another powerful cultivator like him in the Northern Wilderness Secret Realm who came from another region. The man in black's aura was at the peak of the half-step to Primordial Transformation Realm. Even the number 1 genius of the Tian Song country, Song Long, had just reached the half-step to Primordial Transformation Realm. He was still a long way from the peak of the half-step to Primordial Transformation Realm. This man in black, who came from another region and massacred the Northern Wilderness Domain, was actually at the half-step to Primordial Transformation Realm. If this news were to spread, the entire Northern Wilderness Secret Realm would be shaken. However, this man's whereabouts were mysterious. He specialized in assassinations. Even though it was close to the 3-month time limit, no one could find him. Tianyang, who was thousands of miles away, did not know that he was being targeted by a peak half-step to Primordial Transformation Realm. However, Tianyang suddenly frowned slightly. Something in the unseen world made him feel that something was amiss. There's something wrong with the Northern Wilderness Secret Realm, Tianyang muttered to himself. Then, he looked at the excited Flying Sword and stood up with a smile. Don't worry. Once we leave the Northern Wilderness Domain, I'll go to the Firmament Territory immediately. Now, we shouldn't stay here for too long. There are still many opportunities in the Northern Wilderness Secret Realm that we haven't explored yet. Tianyang smiled. Upon hearing this, The flying sword nodded. The excitement in his eyes faded a little, but he did not mind. To him, it was already a great thing that Tianyang had agreed to join Sky Blue College in the future. Naturally, he could not ask for more. Moreover, the flying sword did not come here just to recruit disciples. Although the flying sword was a disciple of the Firmament Territory's Sky Blue College, he was still interested in the Northern Wilderness secret realm. Then, the three of them left the cave and went their separate ways at a junction in the Inuit Mountains. Chapter 225. 10 days was neither too long nor too short. In these 10 days, Tianyang and Ling Yuhan did not slack off. Although most of the things left in the Northern Wilderness secret realm were useless to them, a mosquito was still a mosquito. However, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. Tianyang and Ling Yuhan's strength was enough to sweep through the entire Northern Barren Secret Territory. Hence, most of the opportunities were obtained by the two of them. However, the most powerful items were only mid-grade weapons that were weaker than the killing sword before it evolved. Tianyang could also make the most precious elixirs. This made Tianyang very depressed. After taking away the spiritual stones and herbs that he needed, Tianyang did not care about the rest of the items. He just left them where they were and let the others fight for them. Ling Yuhan did not mind. After all, what Tianyang wanted was what she needed. If Tianyang did not need it, she would not force him. According to Qian Han's complaint, this was because he was in love and could not extricate himself. In the end, after Tianyang and Ling Yuhan had swept through everything, the last few days finally arrived. Most of the opportunities in the Northern Wilderness secret realm were explored by the hundreds of geniuses from various countries who were at the Bright Chi stage. Although most of them did not succeed in exploring all of them, their overall strength and power had increased and improved. However, it also increased the average cultivation and combat strength of these people by leaps and bounds. They were much stronger than before they entered the Northern Barren Territory. These people had all gathered in the Northern Wilderness secret realm, the northern part of the Central Plains, where the legendary 9 steps to Heaven's staircase would open. I heard that the 9 steps to Heaven's staircase is more powerful than any of the opportunities. I don't know if it's true, Tianyang said with a smile as he stood in the empty space with only Ling Yuhan by his side. He looked at the empty space in front of him and smiled. The map in his hand clearly told him that this was the place where the 9 steps to Heaven's staircase would appear. At this moment, many geniuses had already gathered in the surroundings. Even Song Long, who is second only to Tianyang on the surface, had also appeared. Song Long's cultivation level was not bad. He had reached half a step into the origin transformation realm. Compared to Li Feng and Duan Huang, who were both at the peak of the 9th level of the Bright Chi realm, he was much stronger. However, even such a person looked at Tianyang with some fear in his eyes. After all, even if his cultivation base was half a level higher than Duan Huang's, he would still have to use all of his tricks if he wanted to defeat Li Feng or Duan Huang in a one-on-one battle. After all, Li Feng and Duan Huang, as the strongest geniuses of Sky Moon Country and Snowfield Country, must have some life-saving trump cards. Even Feng Qing had a powerful explosive talisman, let alone Li Feng and Duan Huang. However, according to Song Long's information, when Li Feng and Duan Huang died at Tianyang's hands, they did not even have the chance to use their life-saving trump cards. They were directly suppressed by Tianyang's supreme divine ability. Although he did not see that sword with his own eyes, according to the informant's description, even he would not have been able to withstand it. Haha, this must be Tianyang. You are indeed handsome and extraordinary. Seeing you in person is better than hearing about you 100 times. At this time, Song Long suddenly laughed and walked towards Tianyang. Hearing this, Tianyang was stunned. Ling Yuhan was also stunned. This Song Long did not know them at all. What was he doing here at this time? However, as the strongest genius of the Empyrean Kingdom, Song Long did not have any enmity with Tianyang, so he could give him some face. This must be Song Long, nice to meet you. Tianyang extended his hand and shook Song Long's hand. He shook it politely and then withdrew his hand. Seeing this, Song Long's eyes flashed. He immediately confirmed a fact in his heart. Tianyang did not like strangers. Based on his previous probing, the heavenly sunbird had only come to shake his hand because of his status. Otherwise, the heavenly sunbird wouldn't even bother with him. Song Long's face showed a trace of displeasure, but he immediately suppressed it. A genius of this level was not someone he could deal with. I wonder what Brother Tianyang thinks of the 9 steps to heaven. Song Long smiled. Hearing this, Tianyang knew that he wanted to make friends with him. He smiled slightly. I don't know much about it, so I can't talk about it. I hope you can explain it to us. In the Heavenly Sun sect, one would never slap a smiling face. Song Long was the strongest genius of the Heaven Firmament Nation, but he had already lowered himself to such an extent. The Heavenly Sun sect had no enmity with him, so they naturally wouldn't slap his face. The other party did not do anything. He did not even have any enmity before attacking. This was not arrogance. It was asterisk, 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 asterisk. Tianyang was not asterisk, 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 asterisk. However, hearing Tianyang's words, Song Long was overjoyed. He thought that Tianyang would only say a few words and then leave. Who would have thought that Tianyang would give him chance? At the age of 15 or 16, he was able to casually kill a 9th-level Bright Chi Realm expert. His true strength was close to that of a transformed Chi Realm expert. Who wouldn't want to make friends with such a genius? Then I'll embarrass myself. Actually, my understanding of the 9 steps to heaven is from ancient books. Song Long took the chance and immediately started talking nonstop. Tianyang and Ling Yuhan smiled, trying to extract useful information from Song Long's words. Only when everyone from the Empyrean Kingdom had arrived and Song Long had to return did Tianyang and Song Long's conversation end. Tianyang did not mind, but Song Long looked reluctant. In his opinion, there were not many opportunities to make friends with a genius like Tianyang. However, now that the 9 steps to heaven was about to open, he had to return to the Empyrean Kingdom camp to preside over the situation. He could only give up this opportunity for now. This Song Long is an interesting person. Tianyang looked at Song Long's back and chuckled. The reason why Song Long befriended him was not because of power or something like that. On the contrary, Song Long was a complete martial arts fanatic. The reason why Song Long befriended him was because he was strong enough. He could help him improve. Tianyang even had a feeling that if he was more familiar with Song Long might even challenge him. Yi Zhanling and the rest are here too. Looks like the 9 steps to heaven is about to open. Tianyang's eyesight was extraordinary, and his hearing was even better. Even Yi Zhanling's footsteps were heard by Tianyang from a few miles away. The 9 steps to heaven was the biggest opportunity in the entire Northern Wilderness secret territory. Therefore, almost all forces had to send someone to participate. Other than the Moon Armor and the 1,000 Frost Armor, the 9 steps to heaven was definitely the biggest opportunity in the entire Northern Wilderness secret territory. Chapter 226. The 9 heavenly stairs was mysterious and unpredictable. It could be said that as long as it was something left behind from 10,000 years ago, it was an extremely powerful existence. For example, the beginning void technique that Tianyang found in the Lingyun sect's outer sect martial skill pavilion allowed him to complete the first step of the martial path and modify the divine desolate sky spirit art into a form that was most suitable for him. Another example was the powerful war puppet left behind by the sect's magic crystal gate 10,000 years ago. That kind of strength made countless skilled craftsmen in the Snowgale Nation unable to figure out the secret behind it. Another example was the 9 heavenly stairs from 10,000 years ago that was about to open. Another example was the 9-tailed fox Qian Han from 10,000 years ago. And another example was the Tianji Sword Emperor Tianyang from 10,000 years ago. 9 heavenly stairs, 9 divine gates. Those who pass through 3 divine gates will encounter great fortuitous encounters. Those who pass through 6 divine gates will obtain great treasures. Those who pass through 9 divine gates will have endless opportunities. In his heart, Song Long's solemn expression as he repeated the words on the ancient book. Tianyang's mind moved. This 9 heavenly stairs had some secrets. Heavenly Sun had seen quite a few of such heaven ascension stairs in some of the large sections. At this time, Yi Zhanling and his group had finally arrived. They saw Tianyang, who had been waiting for a long time. Yi Zhanling was very happy. He went up and exchanged a few pleasantries before returning to the Snow Gale Nation's camp to command the Snow Gale Nation's disciples. There were other people around. They all looked at Tianyang, who was already known as the strongest genius in the Northern Wilderness secret realm and even the entire Northern Wilderness region, with complicated gazes. There were exclamations, envy, jealousy, and at the same time, killing intent. The remaining people from Sky Moon Nation and Snow Gale Nation all looked at Tianyang furiously. Countless killing intent flashed in their eyes. However, they did not dare to do so. They were afraid that Tianyang would kill them. The mysterious black-clothed man stared at Tianyang. A bloodthirsty light flashed in his eyes. This made Tianyang feel a little uncomfortable. However, when Tianyang's gaze swept over, because there were too many people here, the black-clothed man's concealment technique was too strong. Tianyang also failed to discover the black-clothed man. Last 3 minutes. At this moment, someone's eyes were filled with excitement as he roared. The 9-step stairway would only be opened on the last 3 days of the 3-month trial in the Northern Wilderness Secret Territory. Some of them had timekeeping devices with them, so they were very clear about the passage of time. When the man roared, everyone's mood immediately rose. Even Tianyang put down the thing that made him uncomfortable and focus on the open space. Last minute, that person seemed to have become a timer, constantly shouting, and everyone's hearts were in their throats. This was the greatest fortuitous opportunity in the Northern Wilderness secret realm from 10,000 years ago, the 9 steps to heaven. Last 3 seconds. 3, 2, 1. That person roared crazily. The moment the last word was uttered, a shocking xinguang shot up into the sky. Xinguang did not only have 1 color, but 2. Compared to the light pillar left by the Haoyu cultivator, it was countless times stronger. At the same time, an extremely terrifying pressure was released, oppressing the surrounding people. Other than a few people with terrifying combat strength, the rest of the people were suppressed by this powerful pressure. Only Tianyang, Ling Yuhan, the black-clothed man, and the flying sword were able to stand. However, although the flying sword's strength had reached level 9 of the Bright Chi realm, and he had activated his weapon, he was still suppressed by this aura. In the face of this aura, he was still unable to do anything and was about to collapse. As for Tianyang, he looked at the black-clothed man with a solemn expression in his eyes. He could sense that the black-clothed man was actually at the peak of the half-step to Yuan transformation realm. Even the flying sword from the Firmament Territory's Sky Blue College had just broken through to level 9 of the Bright Chi realm with the help of the relics in the Northern Wilderness secret realm. This person was definitely not from the Northern Wilderness Territory, but he was at the peak of the half-primordial transformation realm. His cultivation was even higher than that of Song Long. Who was he? Moreover, even if he was at the peak of the half-primordial transformation realm, he would not be able to withstand this aura without some tricks up his sleeve. Even Song Long could only bend down in front of this aura, barely preventing himself from falling down. Just as Tianyang looked at the black-clothed man, the black-clothed man seemed to have reacted and looked at Tianyang. Then, Tianyang saw that the black-clothed man had a pair of ferocious blood-red eyes. Then, the black-clothed man gave an equally ferocious smile. A sinister, snake-like killing intent was slowly released. Something's wrong. Tianyang's pupils shrank. He was shocked. This pair of eyes, at this moment, Xinguang suddenly retracted his aura. The enormous aura disappeared as well. Everyone was released from the enormous aura. Everyone stood up. The black-clothed man seemed to have realized that this was a good opportunity. He used a concealment technique to hide his aura. At the same time, he exploded with extreme speed and blended into the crowd. Tianyang had not locked onto this person previously. Now, unless he used his soul energy, it would be impossible for him to find this person. However, soul energy was Tianyang's greatest trump card. He would not use it easily. This person's whereabouts are strange. His strength is not ordinary. I wonder who he is. However, we'll just have to deal with whatever comes our way. At most, we'll just have to fight. Now, the 9 steps to heaven is more important, Tianyang muttered. Then he looked at the tall and majestic 9 steps to heaven. There were only 9 steps on the 9 steps to heaven. However, it seemed to lead to the heavens. A pure, holy, and gorgeous light enveloped the 9 steps to heaven. Although the aura had disappeared, the terrifying aura had never dissipated. Tianyang's expression changed when he saw this. This aura did not seem human. It must be the aura of the 9 steps to heaven. However, this aura was not any weaker than an ordinary ascending heaven realm elite. Although this treasure was huge, it actually had the powerful aura of a pinnacle elite in the continent. Where did this 9 steps to heaven come from? Looks like the secrets of the heavenly continent are not small, no matter if it was 10,000 years ago or 10,000 years later in the central region or the northern wilderness region. Tianyang laughed softly. Then, he brought Ling Yuhan and walked towards the 9 steps to heaven. The 9 heavenly steps, the 9 divine trials, was referring to these 9 steps. 9 steps to heaven, 9 steps to heaven. At this moment, there were already many impatient people who rushed up the 9 steps to heaven. However, most of them were sent flying by the power of the 9 steps to heaven. The remaining people were all extremely strong people. For example, San Long and the black-clothed man. As for Yi Zhongling, he was barely standing on the first step, which was the first divine gate. Chapter 227. San Long had just stepped into the first checkpoint. After stabilizing his footing, he charged forward again. He wanted to step into the second checkpoint. Seeing this, even Tianyang, who wanted to go up immediately, stopped in his tracks. He looked at San Long with interest. Although he had heard some information about the 9-step stairway from San Long, he had not seen it with his own eyes. It was hard for him to understand it directly. Previously, because his attention was attracted by the mysterious man in black, he did not see San Long and the rest step into the first checkpoint. Now, San Long wanted to continue charging forward in a short period of time. Naturally, Tianyang stopped to watch carefully. San Long's muscles are trembling. The pressure of the 9-step stairway is indeed terrifying. Even San Long's tyrannical physical strength can't withstand it. Some people exclaimed. San Long's physical strength could be considered the strongest among the younger generation in the entire northern wilderness region. Legend had it that the Iskang kingdom had an extremely tyrannical body-refining technique. However, very few people in the Iskang kingdom were able to cultivate it successfully. However, once it was successfully cultivated, one's physical strength would skyrocket to a terrifying level. San Long had successfully cultivated it. It was because of this strange body-refining technique that San Long's strength skyrocketed. He could even defeat the younger generation in the northern wilderness region and was known as the #1 in terms of physical strength. Of course, that was because he had not met Tianyang. Tianyang had already cultivated the flood dragon's body to the extreme. He only needed time to condense the heavenly dragon's body. Tianyang planned to condense the heavenly dragon's body on the 9-step stairway and break through to the natal transformation realm. Here it comes. At this moment, San Long was also fully prepared. His eyes were serious, and the true origin in his body roared like 10,000 horses galloping. In the next moment, San Long lifted his leg and stepped towards the second checkpoint. Boom! A loud explosion resounded through the clouds, and an incomparably terrifying pressure pressed down onto San Long's body. In the next moment, San Long's body trembled, and he was almost sent flying. His face suddenly twisted. San Long's true essence crazily roared within his body. He didn't believe that he couldn't even pass through the second trial. Break! San Long roared angrily. The strength of his physical body was completely stimulated. The quintessence in his entire body also entered a state of overloading. If it were not for the fact that the 9-step celestial steps did not allow the use of offensive martial techniques, San Long would have died. San Long even wanted to display all the martial skills he had learned. Boom! Boom! As San Long's strength increased, the pressure on San Long's body increased by a lot. Song Long's face immediately flushed red. The veins on his forehead bulged, and all the strength in his body was pushed to the limit. In the next moment, Song Long finally broke free and stepped on the second checkpoint with his right foot. Then, Song Long took the opportunity to move his entire body to the second checkpoint. Success! Song Long succeeded. Seeing that Song Long stood on the second checkpoint, the people from the Iskang Kingdom were ecstatic. The other people from a northern wilderness region were also delighted. At this moment, an overwhelming pressure surged towards Song Long. Song Long's expression changed. Just as he was about to react, he was hit by the sudden force, and his body lost its balance and was sent flying. Bang! Song Long landed on the ground, and his face went from red to pale. Fortunately, he didn't suffer any serious injuries. Seeing this, the crowd sighed. If it wasn't for the fact that he couldn't stand firmly on the second checkpoint, Song Long could have continued to break through the third checkpoint. Luckily, the 9-step stairway only has a time limit, not a number of times. Based on this situation, it should be easy for Song Long to break through the third checkpoint. The crowd said. Hearing this, the others nodded their heads. Song Long also knew this, so he didn't look discouraged. Instead, under the protection of the Iskang Kingdom's disciples, he consumed an elixir and started to recover from his injuries. After this breakthrough, Song Long had a deeper understanding of the 9-step stairway. He was also more confident in breaking through the third checkpoint. At this moment, the people who stood firmly on the first checkpoint saw the process of Song Long's breakthrough. They understood and started to break through the second checkpoint. Among them, Yi Zhanling's cultivation was too weak. Although he was talented, his physical strength and cultivation were far inferior to the others, and he failed to break through the second checkpoint. Although Dao Feiyang's cultivation was not at the top, he was from the Sky Blue Academy. His physique was extraordinary due to the powerful body tempering technique he cultivated. After trying his best to break through, he also successfully reached the second God Gate. The others, such as Princess Ling Ling, succeeded in breaking through the first checkpoint after these people. However, Tianyang didn't care. His eyes were completely focused on the man in black. Although this person also used a lot of energy to break through the second checkpoint, and his chest was heaving up and down violently, his face was covered by a black hood, and his expression couldn't be seen clearly. However, compared to Flying Sword and Song Long, this man in black seemed to have it easier. This person does have some skills, Tianyang said in a low voice. When the others saw the situation with this person, they were shocked. Who is this man in black? There's no such person in the Northern Wilderness region. Damn it, the Northern Wilderness secret realm of the Northern Wilderness region has been stolen by an outsider, the crowd said angrily. However, the man in black didn't care. Instead, he looked at Tianyang with his scarlet eyes. Killing intent surged in his eyes. The barren region is full of trash. The man in black opened his mouth, and a hoarse voice that didn't hide his contempt came out from his mouth. Hearing this, the crowd was furious. Seeing this, Tianyang sneered and walked out from the crowd, and came to the bottom of the 9-step stairway. No one had ever provoked him like this before. Seeing this, Ling Yuhan, who was beside him, immediately followed. Everyone's gazes also shot towards Tianyang. Tianyang was someone who could kill Li Feng and Duan Huang in one hit. Even Song Long might not be Tianyang's match. Song Long was the first to break through the second divine gate, and he was already halfway there. Although he was sent flying, it was still a glorious defeat. They wondered if Tianyang, as a member of the Northern Wilderness region, could surpass that person and bring glory to the Northern Wilderness region. At this moment, Tianyang also came to the bottom of the 9-step stairway. The 9-step stairway, each step was a heaven. Every step had a huge pressure. Previously, Tianyang didn't understand and was afraid. However, now, the 9-step stairway couldn't stop him. He lifted his foot and stomped. A surge of air burst out from Tianyang's foot and forced the crowd to take a few steps back. Seeing this, the crowd was shocked. Tianyang reached the first divine gate so easily. Even the man in black and Song Long couldn't compare to him. Seeing this, the man in black was stunned. Then he sneered again. Just one divine gate, trash. Oh. Hearing this, Tianyang raised his head and looked at the man in black who was standing on the second divine gate and looking down at him. Is that so? Then Tianyang took another step forward without any rest. Seeing this, the crowd was shocked. Then someone said bitterly, "Why didn't you rest? Didn't you see that Song Long was sent flying by the pressure? Young man, you are indeed impatient. You fell for it just because you were provoked," that person said angrily. At this moment, Tianyang had already taken that step. Boom! The second divine gate conquered. Then Tianyang didn't hesitate. He looked at the man in black who was at the same level as him and took another step forward. Boom! The third divine gate conquered. Then the 9-step stairway suddenly trembled and Xinguang exploded. Seeing this, the people who were scolding Tianyang shut their mouths. They looked at Tianyang, who was standing on the third divine gate and looking down on everyone in shock. Under the light of Xinguang, Tianyang's figure seemed to be infinitely taller. Chapter 228. Bathing in Xinguang, Tianyang felt that his physique and cultivation were improving rapidly. He had never seen Xinguang, even though he had seen a lot in his previous life. Moreover, the aura of the reaching heaven realm didn't seem fake. This was just an ordinary white Xinguang. The Xinguang before had 2 colors. Obviously, the 2-color Xinguang was much more powerful than this white Xinguang. Even so, Tianyang was quite satisfied. There were some impurities and flaws in his body because of his fast cultivation. However, under the illumination of Xinguang, those impurities and flaws were expelled rapidly. His foundation was already incomparably solid. Now that it had been cleansed by the divine light, his foundation could be said to be the legendary perfect foundation. Xinguang is indeed a place that countless geniuses dream of. Fortunately, it only exists in the northern wilderness secret realm of the northern wilderness region. If it were in the central region, the firmament territory, or the realm of Lingwu, it would definitely cause a bloodbath. After about half an hour, Xinguang gradually faded. Tianyang also felt that not only had his foundation become perfect, but his body had also become more perfect. It could be said that after the illumination of Xinguang, Tianyang's physical strength had increased by 30%. His true origins combat strength had also increased by 30%. In summary, this half an hour of Xinguang had made Tianyang's foundation perfect. Tianyang's body was also perfect, and Tianyang's combat strength had soared. I'm afraid that even a supreme-grade spiritual weapon can't compare to this. After leaving Xinguang's illumination, Tianyang looked at the 9-step stairway under his feet and couldn't help murmuring to himself. It wasn't like he hadn't seen a supreme-quality spiritual weapon before. Although there were less than 10 supreme-quality spiritual weapons in the entire Sky Continent, he had never seen such a weapon before. However, Tianyang's heavenly sword was an exception. It could devour other people's magical treasures to advance. Therefore, in Tianyang's previous life, when he was the Tianji Sword Emperor, the Tianshao sword was also upgraded to the level of a supreme-grade spiritual weapon. Although this supreme-grade spiritual weapon was of a lower grade, it was still incomparable to an ordinary upper-grade spiritual weapon. However, Tianyang had a feeling that even if it was in existence at the pinnacle of supreme-grade spirit artifacts, it would still be incomparably insignificant before the 9 steps to heaven. Mysterious. There are too many mysterious things on this continent. Tianyang muttered to himself. Then he circulated the true essence in his body and was pleasantly surprised. His true yuan seemed to have turned into Xiantian true yuan. It was incomparably pure, and its purity had surpassed all half-elemental transformation realm cultivators. With the help of a dissolving pill, he would be able to liquefy it. One had to know that Tianyang's cultivation was only at the peak of clear chi realm. However, he could already leap straight to the elemental transformation realm. Of course, even if he had the opportunity, Tianyang wouldn't use it. If he were to liquefy his true yuan and break through to the elemental transformation realm, then the 100 Zhang ultimate Qi C's true yuan storage advantage would be completely wiped out. As a sword emperor, Tianyang naturally wouldn't do such a stupid thing. Just passing the third divine gate already gives me such a reward. I wonder what will happen when I pass the sixth divine gate, or even a ninth divine gate, and reach the top of the celestial stairway. Tianyang whispered. At this moment, Tianyang suddenly raised his eyebrows and looked behind him. Songlong had already recovered and returned to the second divine gate. Since he was already close to success in his first attempt, it would be much easier for him to succeed in his second attempt. As for the flying sword, he had successfully broken through the second divine gate. However, his face was pale and his forehead was sweating profusely. It would be impossible for him to break through the third divine gate in a short period of time. As for the black-clothed man that Tianyang was a little wary of, that man's face was covered by a black cloak. However, with Tianyang's extraordinary eyesight, Tianyang could see that the man was bleeding from the corner of his mouth. This man was injured. Obviously, this black-clothed man wanted to break through the third divine gate, but he had greatly underestimated the power of the third divine gate. He thought that it would be easy for Tianyang to break through the third divine gate. Unexpectedly, he was injured by the rebounding force of the 9 steps heavenly stairs. Oomph. As if sensing Tianyang's gaze, that man snorted and said disdainfully, "I was just lucky to succeed. That's all you people from a northern wilderness region are capable of. Allow me to rest for a few minutes. After that, I'll let you know that your so-called breaking through the third divine gate is nothing." The black-clothed man sneered. He did not hide the disdain in his words. The murderous intent in his eyes surged again. This man was still planning to kill Tianyang. Noisy. Tianyang did not care about this. He looked at Ling Yuhan, who was still waiting at the first divine gate, and smiled warmly. "Yuhan, come up. The reward for breaking through the third divine gate is not bad." Hearing this, the crowd was shocked. They were shocked by Tianyang's words. Ling Yuhan was only Tianyang's disciple. Furthermore, he was someone who had yet to reach the 9th level of the Bright Chi realm. Tianyang, with his cultivation at the peak of the 7th level of the Bright Chi realm, was able to pass 3 stages in a row. This was already shocking enough. Could it be that Ling Yuhan, the disciple of Tianyang, was also going to pass 3 stages in a row and create yet another legend? Impossible. The black-clothed man was the first to deny. He sneered and said, "You have already exhausted yourself by breaking through the third divine gate. That girl is definitely weaker than you. How could she break through the third divine gate?" The black-clothed man was hostile to Tianyang. He even wanted to kill him. When he saw Tianyang asking Ling Yuhan to come up, his first thought was that it was impossible for Ling Yuhan to do it. However, after thinking about it, Tianyang was not a fool. How could a person who could kill 2 geniuses, Li Feng and Duan Huang, with his cultivation at the peak of Clear Chi Realm Level 7, be so arrogant? Which one of your dog eyes saw that I exhausted myself? Tianyang sneered at the black-clothed man. Hearing this, the black-clothed man's face changed and became extremely ugly. The surrounding heaven and earth spiritual chi seemed to have been disturbed by the true essence that flowed out from his body, becoming pitch black and deep. "Good. Since I was born, you're the first person to be so disrespectful to me. Wait a moment. I will use your head as a sacrifice to the heavens." The black-clothed man was furious. Hearing this, Tianyang ignored him. Who didn't know how to say nice words? At this time, Ling Yuhan had already broken through to the second divine gate without any hesitation. What? Ling Yuhan passed the divine gate silently. Everyone's attention was attracted by the confrontation between Tianyang and the black-clothed man. They did not even see Ling Yuhan pass the divine gate. Now, Ling Yuhan actually passed the second divine gate, standing side by side with Song Long, the flying sword, and the black-clothed man. Damn it! Seeing this, the black-clothed man's eyes spat fire. Damn it! And at this moment, after Ling Yuhan took a deep breath, he took a step forward. The third divine gate. Chapter 229. What? Ling Yuhan really made it to the third divine gate. Everyone was shocked to see Ling Yuhan standing at the third divine gate, receiving the Xingguang bath and looking down at them. They had never expected that Ling Yuhan would really make it to the third divine gate. She had even surpassed the man in black. The master and disciple made it to the third divine gate one after the other. Our northern wilderness region has produced two geniuses. An old man could not help but say. Hearing that, the man in black's face turned even uglier. He glared at the old man, scaring him so much that he did not dare to speak again. However, at that moment, the black-clothed man's face was burning. It was as if he had been slapped by someone. Just a while ago, he had said that Tianyang was spouting nonsense. In the next second, Ling Yuhan had made it to the third divine gate, surpassing them and standing side by side with Tianyang. Damn it! The man in black roared in his heart. However, Tianyang and Ling Yuhan could not be bothered with him. Although this man's combat strength was extraordinary, even more so than Song Long's, he could not be bothered with him. But to Tianyang, who could already fight with an origin transformation realm elite, and Ling Yuhan, who had awakened the nine-tailed lunar fox bloodline and was only slightly weaker than Tianyang, the man in black robes was not as strong as Tianyang. The man in black was still lacking. It seems like everyone in Xinguang has a different amount of Xinguang. After about 5 minutes, the Xinguang bath on Ling Yuhan's body disappeared. Seeing that, Tianyang understood a little. It seems like the first person to receive the Xinguang bath will get the most Xinguang. The rest will get less Xinguang. If Tianyang could tell, the others who had witnessed the two bathing in Xinguang could also tell the difference between Tianyang and Ling Yuhan. Song Long and Flying Sword immediately became anxious. Could it be that the rewards for the third checkpoint in Xinguang were getting lesser and lesser? And they couldn't be slow. Then, the two of them used all sorts of techniques to attack the third divine gate. At this moment, the black-clothed man's face was ashen as he looked at Tianyang with hatred. Previously, he had failed to break through the third god gate, and his internal organs had been impacted. He needed to rest for an hour before he could continue. However, within an hour, perhaps Song Long and Flying Sword would have already broken through to the third divine gate. How could there still be a chance for him? Damn that Tianyang. Thinking of this, the black-clothed man was even more furious. He didn't care if it was his fault for being rash and pushed all the blame to Tianyang. He looked at Tianyang with even more fury. At this moment, Tianyang and Ling Yuhan had already finished resting and were preparing to break through to the fourth divine gate. Above the divine gates, there were all sorts of powerful pressures. The higher they went, the greater the pressure. Tianyang had 7 ultimate sea of qi and a peak flood dragon body. He was confident that he could break through to the 5th divine gate. Now that he had been bathing in Xinguang, his combat strength had increased tremendously. He might even be able to break through to the 6th divine gate. However, even though Ling Yuhan's bloodline suppressed everyone, his own cultivation wasn't strong, and he hadn't cultivated the power of his bloodline to the extreme. It was probably impossible for him to charge into the 6th divine gate today. Let's go. They didn't stay at the 3rd divine gate for too long. The two of them didn't spend much effort to break through the first 3 divine gates. Naturally, they didn't need to rest. Tianyang shouted. Then, Tianyang and Ling Yuhan took another step forward and prepared to break through to the 4th divine gate. Look, Tianyang and Ling Yuhan are breaking through again. Oh my God, could it be that the 9 steps celestial stairs that countless geniuses have bowed down to is not difficult for them? It took less than half an hour for Tianyang to break through to the 3rd divine gate. And this was because Tianyang was waiting for Ling Yuhan to come up. These two are too strong. Everyone was shocked. At this moment, Tianyang and Ling Yuhan already had 1 foot in the 4th divine gate. At this moment, the pressure on the two of them increased tremendously. Even Tianyang's expression changed. This pressure was at least twice that of the 3rd divine gate. Perhaps even magical beasts like earth dragons and rhinoceroses that were known for their strength would be crushed into pieces in the face of this pressure. So strong. Ling Yuhan gritted her teeth and spat out these 2 words from her throat. Her body was also under a great pressure, and the over 200 bones in her entire body seemed to be creaking under this pressure. The pressure was tearing at their nerves, causing them to suffer unbearable pain. If others were to come over, they would probably die in an instant. This pressure was too terrifying. What's going on? Why did the two of them stop? Is the fourth divine gate really so terrifying? Seeing that Tianyang and Ling Yuhan's bodies seemed to have frozen, the crowd started whispering. Seeing this, the man in black revealed a look of joy. Haha, it's best if you can't take it. If you can't take it, you'll be sent flying by the power of the 9-step celestial stairs and be seriously injured. If that's the case, it'll be easier for me to kill you. The man in black shouted in his heart. However, things didn't go as he wished. Tianyang and Ling Yuhan endured the terrifying pressure and took another step forward. In an instant, the pressure on the two of them increased by more than half. However, at this moment, a ray of light flashed across Ling Yuhan's eyes. A bright moon appeared in Ling Yuhan's eyes. Then, in Ling Yuhan's soul's sea, a 9-tailed moon fox roared. 9-tailed moon fox bloodline, activate. Ling Yuhan felt the pressure on her shoulders lighten. She was more confident of passing the fourth divine gate. Then, Ling Yuhan leaped lightly. Her entire body arrived at the fourth divine gate. At the same time, Tianyang activated his flood dragon body and forcefully broke through the pressure and stepped into the fourth divine gate. There was no reward for passing the fourth divine gate. When the two of them arrived at the fourth divine gate, naturally, no Xinguang appeared. However, when they saw that Tianyang and Ling Yuhan had successfully passed the gate, a huge commotion broke out among the Northern Wilderness region martial artists at the foot of the 9 steps celestial stairs. They did it. Tianyang and Ling Yuhan have succeeded. Ha! I knew that the two of them wouldn't be defeated. Look at that person from another region. He's still at the second divine gate. The martial artists from a Northern Wilderness region were pleasantly surprised. Among them, the cultivators from Snowgale were the most surprised. After all, Tianyang and Ling Yuhan were from Snowgale. Humph! Seeing this, the people from Skymoon Country and Snowfield Country harumphed coldly with ugly expressions, flicked their sleeves, and left. If they stayed any longer, their faces might be slapped swollen by Tianyang. Previously, they were the ones who looked down on Tianyang the most. Hearing the discussions of the Northern Wilderness region's cultivators, the man in black's face turned even uglier. These cultivators from the Northern Wilderness region actually dared to humiliate him. All of you deserve to die. Chapter 230. Although the pressure at the fifth divine gate was stronger than the fourth divine gate, it wasn't much stronger. The reason why Tianyang and Duanling Tian found it so difficult to break through the fourth divine gate was because they were unable to adapt to the sudden increase in pressure from the third divine gate of the first stage to the fourth divine gate of the second stage. However, after successfully breaking through the fifth divine gate, Ling Yuhan couldn't take it anymore. Although she had already unleashed her 9-tailed moon fox martial soul, it was still difficult for her to break through. When the crowd saw Ling Yuhan's unique martial soul, they were shocked beyond words. Ling Yuhan's martial soul was so strong that it could even possess a human body. Demonic beasts and demonic beasts were the most common martial souls. However, it was extremely difficult for these martial souls to possess a human body. Only a martial soul of an extremely high grade could be condensed to such an extent and possess a human body. 2 tails, could it be the legendary 9-tailed moon fox? Ling Yuhan's martial soul is so powerful. The crowd was shocked. Hearing this, the black-clothed man's face turned cold. If Ling Yuhan's martial soul was really a 9-tailed moon fox, they would be in big trouble. Even if it's a 9-tailed moon fox martial soul, it must be an impure one. Maybe it's a cross between a 9-tailed moon fox and a snow fox. The black-clothed man's face turned ugly as he scoffed at Ling Yuhan's martial soul. However, from his expression, one could see that he was filled with fear. After all, Ling Yuhan was already so strong. If she had an extremely high-grade martial soul, even he wouldn't be able to handle it. After unleashing the 9-tailed moon fox martial soul, Ling Yuhan's true origin was depleted. She no longer had the strength to break through the sixth divine gate. However, Tianyang wasn't in a hurry. After all, there were still more than 2 days before the Northern Wilderness secret realm closed and the 9 steps to heaven was sealed. 2 days to break through the sixth divine gate from the fifth divine gate was more than enough for geniuses like Tianyang and Duan Ling Tian. After taking a qi-restoring pill, Ling Yuhan forcibly propped herself up and began to cultivate. Although the pressure of the 9 steps to heaven was enormous, it did not mean that the pressure was without any benefits. As long as one could withstand the pressure and cultivate under it, their cultivation speed would definitely increase by several folds. Even Tianyang wanted to cultivate in such an environment. However, when he attempted the fifth divine stage, he had only used his peak form, the flood dragon physique. There was still a long way to go before he reached his limit. If Tianyang cultivated in the fifth stage, it would be a waste of time. If the man in black heard Tianyang's words, he would probably vomit blood in anger. One had to know that he was still stuck at the third divine gate. Other than Tianyang and Yi Qingyu, no one else was able to successfully break through the fourth divine gate. The sudden increase in pressure caused almost everyone to admit defeat and retreat. Even the mysterious man in black failed to break through once. If not for his quick reflexes, he would have been sent flying like Songlong. Their current limit was the third and fourth divine gates. However, Tianyang actually said that the fifth divine gate was far from his limit. If these words were to spread, even Songlong, who wanted to be on good terms with Tianyang, would probably gnash his teeth in anger. Seeing that Ling Yuhan had entered a state of cultivation, Tianyang was not worried that Ling Yuhan would be attacked. On the 9 steps to heaven, it was strictly forbidden to use any offensive martial skills. If someone used it, they would be punished by the 9 steps to heaven and might even lose their lives. Although the man in black wanted to kill Tianyang and Duan Ling Tian, he would definitely not use his own 9 steps to heaven as the price. It seemed that the reason he wanted to kill Tianyang was because of the benefits. If the benefits could not make up for the price, no one would do such a thing. This was the world of martial arts, where the strong preyed on the weak and followed the law of the jungle. It was still fine outside, as there were restrictions from countries and sections. However, in the Northern Wilderness secret realm, where there was nothing but wilderness and opportunities, the barely maintained morals and laws would disappear. Thoughts flashed through Tianyang's mind. He looked at the man again and was still worried. Tianyang valued his disciple very much. Therefore, although Ling Yuhan's combat power was not necessarily inferior to the man in black, Tianyang was still worried about Ling Yuhan cultivating like this. He took out a token from his interspatial bag. Inside it were Tianyang's 3 strongest attacks. Tianyang placed the token beside Ling Yuhan and connected it to her mind. If Ling Yuhan was attacked, the token would immediately counterattack. Tianyang's 3 strongest attacks were enough to block everyone's attacks. If he encountered a weak person, he might even be able to kill him. After placing the token on the stairs of the fifth divine gate, Tianyang adjusted his aura and started to attack the sixth divine gate. Just as Tianyang made his move, the people below immediately saw it. After all, Tianyang's performance was too dazzling. He brought his disciple to break through the fifth divine gate. Now he was going to attack the sixth divine gate and obtain the second opportunity. The third divine gate was illuminated by Xingguang and washed away the impurities in Tianyang's body. The sixth divine gate would definitely not be inferior to the third divine gate. Is he going to attack again? Outside the 9 heavenly steps, the crowd continued to discuss as expected. There were those who were pessimistic and those who were optimistic. They were even arguing nonstop and wanted to fight. Within the 9 heavenly steps, Yi Zhanling looked at Tianyang with a smile on his face. This fellow disciple of the Lingyun sect was really powerful. Yi Zhanling could conclude that Tianyang's future was limitless. As long as he didn't die, he might be able to step into the Tao Fire realm, or even the legendary Spirit Sea realm and Heaven Ascension realm. At that time, Yi Zhanling would have the confidence to brag to others that when Tianyang was young, he was still Tianyang's fellow disciple. However, When he saw Tianyang make his move, Song Long sighed. He was confident that his strength was not weak. At the beginning, he took the lead to attack the second step and almost succeeded. Even though he lost, it was still glorious. At that time, Tianyang had not yet entered the domain of the 9 heavenly steps. However, when Tianyang entered, he made everyone incomparably shocked. He passed 3 divine gates in a row and obtained the Xinguang's bath. He was like a supreme youth. He led his disciples to break through 5 divine gates in a row and surpassed everyone. He stood at the top and looked down on the crowd. Now, he was going to attack the 6th divine gate. If he succeeded, the distance between them and Tianyang would be greater and greater. As for the flying sword, his face was filled with excitement. The black-clothed man was still crazily jealous and furious. Chapter 231. Tianyang had just taken a step when there was a thunderous sound. Boom! Xinguang shot out like a bolt of lightning from the top of the 9 heavenly steps. It was like an arrow piercing through the clouds, causing the entire world to tremble. Then, a huge pressure poured down like a torrential rain. Tianyang's skin glowed as he pushed his flood dragon body to the extreme. The 6th divine gate is indeed not that easy to pass. Everyone also saw the pressure that was much stronger than the 4th and 5th divine gates. There was also the lightning that was swimming in the clouds, as if it was waiting for an opportunity to kill Tianyang. Not only was there a huge pressure on his body, but he also had to worry about the sudden attack of the lightning. The 6th divine gate was actually a double pressure on his body and mind. Song Long's expression changed. If he encountered such a situation, the best he could do was worry about this and that, causing him to lose everything and barely escape unscathed. However, Tianyang didn't seem to be afraid of the lightning at all. Mental pressure? It sounded nice, but in reality, the lightning wouldn't descend before Tianyang broke through the 6th divine gate. Tianyang had seen many such tests before. Although this lightning was a little special, it was still the same. Tianyang was completely confident that this lightning would not attack him. Even if it did, what did Tianyang have to fear? With Tianyang's tenacious Tao heart, even if the lightning could kill him in an instant, Tianyang wouldn't take half a step back. A swordsman should have a sharp edge and press forward with indomitable will. Apart from the lightning, the pressure from the 6th divine gate is nothing. Tianyang chuckled. His voice stunned everyone. Didn't they see that Song Long and Flying Sword's expressions were very ugly? In the end, in Tianyang's words, it had become nothing. What arrogance, he's just forcefully holding on. Even if this guy can really pass through the 6th divine stage, he will definitely be injured. It's impossible for him to break through the 7th divine stage. The man in black mocked. Hearing this, the rest of the people felt a little indignant. Who was this man? He was clearly not from a northern wilderness region, but he dared to say that he wanted to kill Tianyang. However, the black-clothed man's performance was not any weaker than Song Long's flying sword. If it wasn't for his bad luck, he might have already entered the 4th stage. This kind of strength also caused fear in the hearts of the crowd, and they did not dare to say a word back. Seeing that no one spoke, the man in black became even more arrogant. Haha, I knew it. This desolate northern wilderness region only has this kind of ability. Look, Tianyang will die under the lightning. The unbridled laughter of the man in black attracted the dissatisfaction of the crowd, but no one dared to answer. This man was too hateful. He clearly had no enmity with them, but he was so arrogant that he even cursed Tianyang. However, no one had the strength to fight back. They could only place their hopes on Tianyang, who was trying to break through the 6th divine stage. At this time, Tianyang had already activated his flood dragon body to the extreme. His skin glowed with a precious light, and his strong defense forcefully resisted the terrifying pressure. Then, Tianyang went against the momentum and stepped on the stairs of the 6th divine stage with his right foot. Boom! At this time, the lightning in the sky exploded with a deafening sound. It was pressuring Tianyang, forcing him to retract his right foot and not touch the 6th divine stage. However, Tianyang did not even bother to move his eyebrows. Although the pressure suddenly increased, Tianyang was already used to it. The first opportunity is a great opportunity. The light from Xinguang washed away the impurities in my body. It is indeed a great opportunity. The second opportunity is a great treasure. I don't know what it is, but it will definitely not be worse than Xinguang. Tianyang thought to himself. Then, the true yuan in his spiral meridians began to circulate crazily. The seven extremes sea of qi exploded with light. In the next moment, Tianyang exerted his strength. The pressure that could easily kill a cultivator at the peak of the clear qi realm was useless in front of Tianyang, who was at the peak of the clear qi realm. Boom! The lightning in the sky exploded again. However, Tianyang did not care. He gathered all the true yuan in his body and stomped on the ground. His body flew upwards. Then, Tianyang used the Void Step secret skill and exploded with extreme speed. Not only did he reach the sixth divine stage, but he also stood firm. Great! Seeing this, San Long could not help but roar. He was extremely proud. This was Tianyang, someone from the Northern Wilderness region. Even the geniuses from other regions could not enter the sixth divine stage. Tianyang went against the trend and conquered it. Even Flying Sword was excited. From the information he had, no one had been able to break through the sixth stage in all the previous times the Northern Wilderness secret territory was opened. Today, Tianyang did it. He broke the myth and reshaped history. A peerless genius, Flying Sword exclaimed. He was from Sky Blue College and should not be so excited. However, Tianyang's performance shocked even him. In the entire Northern Wilderness region, no one was stronger than Tianyang. Perhaps even in Sky Blue College, there were only a handful of people who could stand shoulder to shoulder with Tianyang. Flying Sword was just an unknown disciple in Sky Blue College. He was only sent to the Northern Wilderness region to recruit students because of his good luck. Now he had recruited a peerless genius like Tianyang. With Tianyang's strength, Flying Sword would definitely soar and become a famous person in Sky Blue College. However, the man in black looked even worse. He stared at Tianyang, who was almost invisible under the light of the 9-step stairway. Behind the blurry light, Tianyang stood proudly on the sixth divine stage. He looked down on everyone and himself. Bastard! How dare someone from the Northern Wilderness do this? A peerless genius. This person is definitely a peerless genius. If I kill this person, my heavenly demon blood will definitely be completed. When I return to the sect in the future, I will definitely be the center of attention. The man in black roared crazily. A bloody light flashed in his eyes. If others could hear the roar in his heart, they would definitely be shocked. The heavenly demon blood devoured blood. This was a demonic technique. This man in black was actually a demonic cultivator. At this moment, Tianyang reached the sixth divine stage and looked down on everyone. Looking at him from a 9-step stairway, one's vision would be blocked by the light, but not outside. Everyone looked at Tianyang, who was close to the top of the sixth divine stage. It was as if the sky was within reach. They were shocked beyond words. This was Tianyang. A peak stage 7 bright Qi realm cultivator had surpassed stage 9 bright Qi realm, half-step to primordial transformation, and even peak half-step to primordial transformation. Such talent could be said to be invincible. At this moment, on the 9-step stairway, Xinguang gathered and shrouded Tianyang's body. Chapter 232. Rays of Xinguang converged and enveloped Tianyang, preventing outsiders from seeing the changes within. Although the Xinguang this time wasn't the main body of the fortuitous encounter and was useless to Tianyang, it was even more powerful than the first fortuitous encounter of the third divine gate. The first fortuitous encounter, Xinguang, was the most ordinary one-colored Xinguang. Although it was useful to Tianyang, it was naturally inferior to the multicolored Xinguang. At this moment, the Xinguang that enveloped Tianyang was the two-colored Xinguang. This made Tianyang feel a little regretful. If the first fortuitous encounter, Xinguang, was the two-colored Xinguang, he would definitely be able to reach a higher level. However, Tianyang didn't know that when his sky firmament sword evolved, it had summoned countless 9-color Xinguang and filled his sea of soul. He also didn't realize that although the one-colored Xinguang had washed away the impurities in his body, and purified his true yuan, it had no effect on his soul. This was because the nine-colored Xinguang had already raised Tianyang's Sea of Soul to a terrifying level. Even the one-colored Xinguang couldn't raise it in the slightest. The second fortuitous encounter, the so-called Great Treasure, I wonder what it is. Being enveloped by the two-colored Xinguang, one black and one white Xinguang, was dazzling. However, Tianyang was unmoved and only looked at the empty sky. At this moment, a dazzling ray of light suddenly descended from the sky and fell towards the heavenly sun at a terrifying speed. As expected, this fortuitous encounter isn't that easy to obtain. Tianyang smirked when he saw the rapidly descending resplendent light. However, this level is far from enough to do anything to me. In the next moment, Tianyang stepped onto the stairs, and a powerful counterforce directly sent Tianyang flying. Then, Tianyang revolved his true essence and used a secret technique to step on the air, rushing towards the brilliant light. A powerful suction force burst forth from Tianyang's palm, firmly capturing the resplendent light. Then, with a wave of his hand, the resplendent light fell into Tianyang's hand. Tianyang also landed lightly on the ground. The black and white Xinguang around them also gradually faded away. It's actually a jade scroll. Tianyang landed on the ground and looked at the item in his hand. He was shocked when he took a closer look. This scroll was pure white and flawless. It was completely made of an unknown jade. Tianyang squeezed it hard, but it didn't deform at all. This kind of hard jade would not lose its value even if it was made into a spiritual weapon. However, it actually became a scroll in the 9 steps celestial stairs. Just what kind of martial skill is worthy of using this jade that is comparable to a spiritual weapon? Tianyang was shocked. He didn't immediately attempt to break through to the 7th divine gate. Instead, he sat down cross-legged and opened the jade scroll. Once the jade scroll was opened, a layer of hazy light appeared around it. Even a cultivator in the Tao Fire realm couldn't see through it, let alone others. Tianyang's attention was also attracted by the words inside the jade scroll. Heaven-devouring seal. At the top of the scroll, the 4 big words exploded with a terrifying aura. Then, the 4 big black words seemed to transform into a black whirlpool that could devour everything. It sucked Tianyang's mind and soul in. A sense of danger suddenly erupted from the depths of his soul. Tianyang immediately came back to his senses and looked at the 4 words in shock. Just the 4 words had such a remarkable power. Even if he was a peerless emperor in his previous life, he could only barely do such a thing. This 9 steps celestial stairs is really mysterious. Maybe it doesn't belong to this world. Tianyang said. He had a guess in his heart. Could it be that the entire northern wilderness secret territory appeared because of the 9 steps celestial stairs? However, Tianyang's current strength was too weak. The secret behind the 9 steps celestial stairs was definitely extraordinary. If he were to touch it rashly, he would definitely die. Now, it was better to take a look at this heaven-devouring seal. Heaven-devouring seal devours everything and refine one's body. Martial spirit devours everything. Then, there was a brief description of this line of words. However, when he saw the description, Tianyang was suddenly shocked. This heaven-devouring seal was called heaven-devouring, and it had the ability to devour. Tianyang was not surprised. However, it could even devour martial spirits. This made Tianyang extremely shocked. Until now, only his sky cloud sword had something that could devour martial spirits. No, this heaven-devouring seal should have nothing to do with the sky cloud sword. After all, this heaven-devouring seal can only devour martial spirits by force if it wants to devour them. It can't be used for its own purposes. Tianyang looked at it again and suddenly understood. This heaven-devouring seal cultivated the ability to devour. As long as one's strength was strong enough, naturally, it could devour anything. However, martial spirits were too special. If the heaven-devouring seal wanted to devour them, it could only devour them like an attack. It was useless to do it by force. Compared to the sky firmament sword, the difference was like heaven and earth. However, although the sky cloud sword can devour, it can only devour martial spirits. If I can cultivate this heaven-devouring seal, I will have a powerful killing technique. I will even have a technique to speed up my cultivation. Tianyang muttered to himself. Although the power of this heaven-devouring seal was not as strong as the sky cloud sword, it was not weak in other aspects. After skimming through it, Tianyang did not find any problems with it. Relieved, he activated the martial skill imprint left on the jade scroll and transferred the cultivation method into his mind. The heaven-devouring seal was a heaven-rank, mid-grade martial skill. It was extremely overbearing. If it was mastered, it could devour the heavens and the earth. The heaven-devouring seal was divided into many stages of cultivation. The first stage, a huge amount of complicated information flowed into Tianyang's mind. Tianyang also displayed his peak heavenly completion realm soul power to read, digest, and absorb it. However, the heaven-devouring seal was a heaven-rank mid-grade martial skill. The information was too complicated. After Tianyang read a few stages of the cultivation method, he could not continue to absorb it. He could only seal it in his mind and read it when he needed it. After that, Tianyang opened his eyes. A deep light flashed in his eyes. He was cultivating the heaven-devouring seal. However, when Tianyang activated the martial skill imprint and memorized it, the words on the jade scroll disappeared rapidly. In the end, it turned into nothingness. Even the jade scroll itself turned into dust and disappeared. A hazy light shrouded Tianyang. No one could see Tianyang's current state, whether they were inside or outside the 9 heavenly steps. However, the light stopped at the 6th divine gate. He definitely did not break through the 7th divine gate. This made Songlong and the others feel relieved. If Tianyang was really so monstrous that he could break through the divine gates at such a high level, they would be ashamed to death. Tianyang stopped at the 6th divine gate to cultivate the heaven-devouring seal. Naturally, he could not do anything. Everyone's gaze turned towards Songlong and the others again. After that, Songlong and the others also started to break through. However, Chapter 233. The sun and moon alternated and the stars moved. The dark night covered the northern wilderness secret territory with a mysterious veil, and the day lifted the veil again. On this day, the people in the northern wilderness secret territory did not back down at all. They charged towards the 9 heavenly stairs again and again. However, there were only a few people who could reach the 1st divine gate. Those who did not have a divine gate tried to reach the 1st divine gate, while those on the 1st divine gate tried to reach the 2nd divine gate. Those on the 3rd divine gate tried to reach the 4th divine gate, while those on the 4th divine gate tried to reach the 5th divine gate. Of course, there was no one on the 6th divine gate either. None of the geniuses here were useless. One day was enough for them to do a lot of things. Songlong and the man in black finally broke through the 3rd god gate and entered the 4th god gate with their half-step essence transformation realm cultivation. Although the flying sword had an extraordinary background, his cultivation was still weak, so he could not reach the 4th divine gate. However, he would reach it soon. What surprised everyone was that among the few people who managed to reach the 3rd divine gate, there was a person from the Arctic state. That person was called Yi Zhanling, and he was the first person to reach the 3rd divine gate on the 2nd day. Although he used up a lot of energy and almost fainted, he still succeeded, including the higher-ups Tianyang and Ling Yuhan. There were 3 people from the Arctic state who managed to reach the 3rd divine gate. This shocked everyone. Other than the Snowfield country and the Sky Moon country, which were almost destroyed, there were less than 10 powerful countries in the northern wilderness region who could pass the 3rd divine gate. And among these 10 people, the Arctic state, a small country, took up almost 1/3 of the total number. This shocked everyone. Was the Arctic state really a small country? How could their performance on the 9 heavenly stairs be more dazzling than a big country like the Iskang state? Some martial arts fanatics were even thinking that the Arctic state had 3 people who could reach the 3rd divine gate. It seemed that they were not ordinary. They had to travel well in the future. Of course, they could not cause any trouble. Otherwise, those geniuses from the Arctic state who had reached the third divine gate would definitely suppress them. It seems that the northern barren secret realm has led a small country to rise. Song Long sighed as he looked at Yi Zhanling, who was behind him. Yi Zhanling's cultivation was too weak compared to them, yet he was able to achieve the same result as them. On the 9 steps, heavenly stairs, those with a higher cultivation would have an advantage. The reason why he and the black-clothed man could be faster than the flying sword was because they were at the half-step essence transformation realm. As for Ling Yuhan and Tian Yang, whose cultivation was really weaker than theirs, the Azure Dragon didn't want to mention them either. The kind of existence outside the norm, it was fine to just look at them. Why should he categorize them as his own kind and make himself suffer? Soon after, everyone tried to break through, but only a few succeeded. The 5th and 6th stages were still under the control of Tian Yang and his disciple. Even the black-clothed man would find it extremely difficult to break through. At this moment, the hazy light surrounding Tian Yang gradually dispersed. Tian Yang's body was also exposed to everyone's sight. Tian Yang slowly opened his eyes. His eyes seemed to contain a black whirlpool that could swallow everything. Suddenly, he stood up and his hands moved rhythmically, forming one seal after another. There was no infusion of true yuan, but these seals seemed to have a boundless devouring power. The surrounding air seemed to be swallowed by these formless seals. It was hard to imagine what would happen if Tian Yang injected all of his true yuan into these seals. Perhaps, after reaching the greater success stage, it would really have the terrifying power to swallow the heavens and earth, burn the mountains, and boil the seas. Mid-grade heaven-class martial technique, and it's not just any ordinary mid-grade heaven-class martial technique. It's not much weaker than my sky sword technique. Tian Yang mumbled to himself. He was puzzled. The reward for the 6th divine gate was actually so generous. One had to know that in the entire northern wilderness region, there wasn't a single upper-grade Earth-class martial technique, not to mention peerless Earth-class martial technique, low-grade heaven-class martial technique, or even mid-grade heaven-class martial technique. However, this heaven-devouring seal was a powerful mid-grade heaven-class martial technique. Tian Yang didn't know that the great treasure of the 6th divine gate had a lot to do with his performance in the previous divine gates. Tian Yang, from the moment he stepped into the 9 heavenly steps, he didn't stop at all. If that was the case, he might not have been able to obtain the mid-grade heaven-class heaven-devouring seal. However, in the 5th divine gate, under the heavy pressure of the wind and thunder above his head, Tian Yang still stuck to his heart. He was fearless and went against the flow. Such a performance had completely broken the record of the 9 heavenly steps. Even before he came to this world, no one had been able to do this. Therefore, the 9 heavenly steps immediately gave Tian Yang the greatest reward. It was the mid-grade heaven-class martial technique, the heaven-devouring seal. If it was someone else, even if they were lucky enough to step into the 6th divine gate, they would at most obtain an ordinary Earth-class martial technique. Ling Yuhan, on the other hand, might obtain a mid-grade or upper-grade Earth-class martial technique. However, to obtain a heaven-class martial technique? Absolutely impossible. Only a person who performed as perfectly as Tian Yang would be able to obtain a heaven-class martial technique. The power of the heaven-devouring seal is indeed unparalleled. Tian Yang mainly cultivated the way of the sword and didn't do much research on seals. However, he had seen many martial techniques and had dabbled in almost all types of martial techniques. Tian Yang muttered to himself as he looked at the strange seal that was gradually dissipating in the air. However, I still spent an entire day. As a sword emperor, Tian Yang's comprehension of martial techniques was astonishing. Previously, he had spent at most a few hours to comprehend martial techniques. As for the sky-treading secret technique, it was a secret technique and not a martial technique. The cultivation of a secret technique was much more difficult than a martial technique. Therefore, although he had cultivated the sky-treading secret technique for 2 to 3 days, it didn't necessarily mean that it was more profound than the heaven-devouring seal. However, Tianyang had spent an entire day to cultivate the heaven-devouring seal. A peerless sword emperor from 10,000 years ago had spent an entire day to comprehend and cultivate this martial technique. It was extremely shocking. However, this heaven-devouring seal has 7 divine powers. I have already grasped the first divine powers. It can be considered that I have another powerful trump card. Tianyang chuckled as the true yuan in his body surged. The heaven-devouring seal was extraordinary. Although it was just a seal, Tianyang could still unleash great power. Now, Tianyang had mastered the celestial sword art, Dragon King's divine fist, Dragon Sword divine ability, devouring heaven seal, 9-tempered dragon body, and 5 heaven-ranked martial skills. If Tianyang's true yuan was enough to support him to unleash all of these martial techniques, then even the Lingyun sect leader, Li Lingyun, would not be able to defeat him. Tianyang would be able to defeat all of them. After that, Tianyang stood up and looked at the remaining 3 divine gates with a grin. In the last day or so, he could totally do it.